Go for liftoff in T-minus 30.
Stand by for further instructions, Minnesota Black Robe Regiment.
Secondary guidance systems engaged.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, it will be on my mark.
All systems are a go. All systems are a go.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, you are over the target. You are authorized to fire at will.
Hey, good Saturday morning. Still Saturday morning, sorta. But hey, I'm TC. This is Minnesota Black Robe Regiment MBRR Media Podcast, whatever you're used to calling it. We are rebranding. We're adding media to the title because we're doing multiple platforms now. So, and I don't know why I do the Bob Dole thing and talk about myself in the third person. I've never been able to figure that out. Something about when you start doing podcasting, you start saying we, like there's a lot of you, and there isn't. There's just me. I am everything. That's so much to be said about my personality right there. But anyway, we're going to be bringing Adam Schwarze on. Somebody was like, no, I'm pretty sure it's Schwarze. And I'm like, no, that's old German. So we did verify. So we're going to be bringing Adam on here in just a minute to be talking about his life and career and his desire to put himself back in the line of fire. In some respects, philosophically speaking, quite literally with the decision that he's made to run for Senate in the state of Minnesota as a Republican. But before we do that, I want to give a shout out to all the channel members. You guys know who you are. I can't thank you enough. You help pay the bills. You help keep the internet going. You keep the electricity on. And that has never been more true than since the other half. Mrs. TC had her heart attack back in November. And we are at a place where we're getting to the point where we're going to have to start making some hard decisions financially, because strangely enough, the hospitals and the doctors want their bills. So you guys are the bills paid. So you guys have been very helpful in that. And if you're interested, we'll be putting the link to the fundraiser that some friends set up for us to kind of waylay some of those costs. So, and thanks to show producer level supporter Angry Vet from YouTube. Looking for somebody to be a show producer level supporter over on Rumble, because this will be going out on Rumble after we live stream here. And a big shout out to iMav, who is show producer level from Subscribestar. And if I haven't hit you guys up enough, we're going to hit you up with one more thing here before we bring Adam in. So Adam and I met in person for the first time at the Defend the Guard event. Back in March already. Man, that's been a while. And we are the people who are involved in putting together Defend the Guard in Minnesota are hosting a political action training group through Defend the Guard and Bring Our Troops Home. And I want to show that to you guys here if I can. It's not wanting to cooperate. There we go. The computer does not like me today. So there we come on. There we go. There it is. So this right here, and the link to this is going to be in the description of the video as well, and it's also going to be going out on Facebook. What you're seeing here is our political leadership school. We need 15 more people to sign up, even if you cannot go. But we need 15 more people to go to the link, once again, that will be in the description of this video, to sign up and pay the $50 to be part of this school. once again, even if you can't go, consider it a donation, because the people that can go are going to go, and they're going to take the information that guys like Diego and Dan and Hunter and others are going to offer us to be able to actually make a change in the state of Minnesota to advance the Bring Our Troops Home, Defend the Guard legislation. But we have to have a minimum of 20 or 25 people signed up. So we need 15 more people who are willing to either go or willing to donate so that we can get the guys here to help cover their costs and whatnot for travel and for setup. And once again, if you can go, that'd be great. But if you can just even donate, that would be even better. So there, I got that part out of the way, got all the ugliness out of the way. So I thought maybe we should get to the actual ugly part now. We're gonna put two veterans side by side here, and we have to be in different rooms because we're from different branches, and you can't put a former Marine / turned Navy SEAL into the room with a paratrooper at the same time without a lot of bodyguards and protection for the SEAL. Really, like, it's for the SEAL. But Adam, thanks for doing this. Just so you know, we ramble when we do openings for things like this because it builds the audience. That's all. We could just be reading our grocery list. We're just trying to get the message out to people and everybody's notifications going. So we just make you sit there and watch just for the heck of it.
I'm here for you today, buddy.
You mean you're not traveling for once on a weekend?
Yeah, I'll be traveling later on, but it was important to me to carve out time for you and talk with some other constitutional conservatives about why I, actually showed up for the Defend the Guard rally, and some. I think there's some foundational core beliefs that I think you and I have some good dialogue and discussions on.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't want to be in a room with somebody who thinks exactly like me all the time. That would just, well, that'd be like living with myself, and I have to do that all the time anyway. So you before we even get onto the idea of campaigning for office, you spend some time in the military, a couple of branches. And for those who weren't at the Defend the Guard rally or haven't had a chance to watch the stream that I put out, where you kind of gave some of your background, tell us a little bit about who you are as a person and where you came from, and because you're a lifelong Minnesota person. But how did you end up in the Marines and then end up in the SEALs and whatnot? What motivated you?
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, TC. Lifelong Minnesotan, as you said, adopted at birth, raised also in Minnesota. So both my biological and my adopted family are in Minnesota, from Minnesota. 9/11 happened during my senior year of high school in 2001. So watched the Twin Towers fall. Truth be told, I was actually already in the process of trying to enlist to go into the military. I was trying to become a SEAL. But after the Twin Towers fell, the Navy recruiters their office was closed for a few weeks. So the quickest way to get into the gunfight was I ran into a Marine recruiter. Didn't know what the Marines were, but true to his word, first to fight is one of their mottos. And I enlisted on my 18th birthday in 2001 in October. And then they did not lie. When I graduated in 2002, within 2 weeks, I had my feet on the yellow footprints in San Diego. And then that same year I graduated high school, I was on my first combat deployment. I did all 5 phases of Operation Iraqi Freedom throughout 3 deployments with the Fleet Marine Force. And then I did some time with the Department of State doing some interagency work out of embassies, mostly as a Marine. And then I got accepted from the top 1% of the enlisted Marine Corps to get a paid commissioning program. At that time is when I actually found out that my biological parents later on in life had 3 other children. So I met my 3 biological siblings. They're full blood. It was an amazing opportunity in my life. And then I came home to the University of Minnesota for a few years to be a big brother to my much younger brothers and sisters for a little bit. And then I commissioned into the Navy in 2012 as a Naval Special Warfare Officer, or SEAL, if you will. I did 2 deployments with SEAL Team 3, and then in 2016 I screened for Naval Special Warfare Undersea. They do near peer, great power competition mission sets, largely in the intelligence domain, but all nuclear adversaries. So if you screw those up, it could be nuclear holocaust. So I would say that no mission is allowed to fail, but those are certainly, I would call those no fail-esque missions, until I got arrested for getting groceries in 2022 at the
Well, wait
beginning
a
of
minute, wait a
COVID.
minute. No, I missed that part. So
Oh yeah. Oh
you
yeah.
got arrested for buying groceries in
Yeah.
2000 and when?
22. That's how my career ended. At the beginning of COVID, bought groceries, brother.
Where were you
I,
that
I
you
thought you knew
I
this,
thought
man.
we
That's
had that where I thought I had some rough go during COVID. How in the world did you get arrested for buying
I mean,
groceries?
that's why I sit before you today. Is I was doing all these missions, 9 deployments. I was the number one dude in every chain of command I served in for 18 and a half years. Meritorious promotions, combat valors, a very distinguished career that ended because I got groceries at the beginning of COVID, and got arrested in Hawaii, which, if you can believe it, we're both Minnesotans. Hawaii even had more draconian policies.
Yeah.
It was a hyper radical progressive district attorney that misidentified my lady and I as white tourists, not as a, because I didn't advertise that I was a Navy SEAL mission commander. That's where Naval Special Warfare Undersea is headquartered out of. So I was back home in between deployments, working up for a different tasker. And yeah, brother, they arrested me on the island of Kauai. And then it's like, hey, by the way, I'm actually a federal employee exempt, and oh, by the way, I'm a Navy SEAL mission commander. And they're like, oh, the cops on the ground, they were like, oh my God, we made a mistake. The assistant chief of police, she's a local sheriff, so like a Hawaiian, and they don't like white people over there. So like, oh yeah, they thought you were a tourist, but we'll make it go away. It got to the district attorney on the island of Kauai, who's a running as a, even though he's a white guy, running as a, I will not let these tourists jeopardize your safety, and leaked out mugshots. So you can like go and Google me, and you get they like altered our mugshots. Looked like we were on like a 5-day like drug bender or something. And yeah, that's what ended my career and made me very involved in politics, and got smart real quick on why leadership matters in government, brother.
My friend Kevin says, "How the hell did TC not know that? I knew that." Um,
Yeah, good
yeah,
good good research, TC.
I, I'm so I'm so busy. I actually have non-paid researchers, and I never even thought to ask that question. And if you remember, when I don't know if you told that part of your story at the Defend the Guard rally,
No, that's not what that rally was about. That rally
right?
was about
So
our boys and girls who were sent over there for other
yeah, so
nefarious means.
so it I don't know how that, hey, I'll admit I missed it. I don't like.
Well, I'm not running on it, but it's an important part of my background, and it's
No, it
certainly
is. It is absolutely very important, and I'm I was entertained listening to it, just knowing that my audience was going to give me crap for missing that. So,
yeah,
um,
yeah,
but
literally number one performer throughout 10 different military commands for 18 and a half years, and my career was ended because I bought groceries. That's freaking wild, man. So I do have to run off the
so
story though.
so yeah, so
So that
so
so the,
the
the
D
charges were dismissed with prejudice, obviously completely unconstitutional, completely nefarious. The the 400-pound local cop, the local looking Hawaiian lady, she died of a heart attack. And then it's not funny, it is what happened. And then I think this is kind of funny, that the radical DA, the white guy who's pretending to be like all for the people, he got fired because the shit he was doing was illegal, including that. And then he transitioned sexes. So he turned into or like attempted to turn into a woman, whatever you want to call it. He transitioned his gender after he was fired, and became a climate activist lawyer.
oh, so much there, so much there. So Command got a hold of that then, obviously, and was not real happy
Yeah, bro,
with
that
you.
made international news. The AP picked up the story. It was before George Floyd. So it was kind of at the beginning of COVID, where everybody's like still scared and didn't know what was going on, and is the world going to melt down? And So and again, I understand that people were scared. I'm very empathetic to that. But the positions that the government was doing, specifically like Minnesota and the Hawaiian government, they didn't even make sense. Even if you were scared of COVID, like locking down the tennis courts, but keeping the J.C. Penney's open, trying to people have people in lockdowns inside, but then they would give you tickets if you're out hiking a mountain by yourself out in the wilderness. Like that just doesn't objectively never made sense.
It's like
Um,
California arresting a paddleboarder for being on the
yeah,
ocean by himself. Yeah.
exactly. Like you're getting vitamin D and you're getting exercise. That was the crime. But as long as you were, locked up in a folks home, killing each other, that was fine. Um,
Right.
so yeah, man, that was kind of like that was the genesis of my getting involved in politics right there.
So what was command's response to that then? I mean, obviously it was the end of your career, but I mean,
Yeah.
what was their justification for that? I mean,
Well,
especially once they dismiss charges.
well, they didn't wait for the civilian side to play out. I mean, immediately they stood down my team, and I was in the penalty box for a while. But as an officer, you don't need a reason to take somebody's command. It's just loss in confidence.
Wow. Wow. Very our stories are quite similar. Yours just more severe.
Yeah.
I didn't rise to the level of being an operator by any stretch of the imagination. So, but my former employer did not like my activism just through my show. So you and I can relate to some degree on some of that. So we'll have to sit down over a coffee or something sometime, and I can tell you that side pretty. Uh,
Yeah.
the all the most of the viewers know my story, but
Yeah.
uh,
So,
so so you transition out, you come back to Minnesota right away then, or
I was in Washington D.C. and I was about to start getting medical care because at that point I had 9 deployments and probably a 3-page deep medical record, despite dozens of broken bones and combat-related injuries and TBIs and things like that. But at that point, truly, brother, when my career was essentially ended for getting groceries, and I realized that leadership matters in government, and there's no, some of those missions that I was a part of in the SEALs were strategically important. Uh, Even as just doing kinetic things as a Marine, there's nothing that I could do that would be more impactful, and be part of the solution than being fixing the problem. And the problem is failure leadership within government. So how do as a military service member yourself, we don't talk about problems, we become part of the solutions, right? So for me, that solution was going to be run for office. So I was liaisoning with lawyers from the Trump administration, specifically the White House Ethics Council, and I was going to look to run for Congress in CD3 last midterm. That was when we had 5 of 7 Navy SEALs flip congressional seats, which is pretty impressive. I don't know what math that is, 5 of 7, but it's a high percentage rate considering 93% of congressional incumbents they maintain. So I mean
right?
that's
Yeah, once they're
orders.
in, they seem to stay.
Yep. Flipping 5 of 7, that's orders of magnitude higher than the normal process. So I was going to be one of those people, and then this is part chapter 2, completely separated from the Hawaii thing. But I was going to run for Congress. The Secretary of the Navy found out, and then he kept me in service. Biden's Secretary of the Navy kept me in service just so I couldn't run. I mean
He
that's
was trying to hatch act you.
He did Hatch Act me. Yeah, no, he did. And he was found guilty of that violating the Hatch Act, which is ironic because I had to go before a whole trial and prove my innocence, which I did. There's no basis of misconduct for any of the charges that the SecNav had alleged I did. But then, ironically, about 3 months after my trial, that completely vindicated me. The White House Ethics Council, Biden's own lawyers, found that the SecNav had violated the Hatch Act. But surprise, surprise, the Democrats don't have any accountability when it's on them. So nothing happened to him essentially. Yet.
Yet. If they wait long enough, though, sooner or later people forget.
I don't think people are going to forget because he did some other stuff that was pretty shady too.
You're going to have to color me surprised. I just can't imagine that somebody that high up would possibly be involved in anything shady.
Yeah,
I,
right.
I color me shocked. So you get past all of that, and by that point, obviously, you can't run for the House because
Yep.
that's all done. So you decide that 2026 is going to be the year, and you throw your hat in the ring. Actually, kind of announced well before you made your intentions clear well before even 2025. But
Yeah.
so you come into 2025, you hit the ground running, ready
Yep.
to, for lack of better terminology, to strap the boots on and go back into combat, but from a political philosophical
From a
side.
team guy, stance, we'd say from 2023 to 2025, I planned the dive, and now I'm diving my plan.
Well, for those of you that don't understand, that means he was swimming. He wants to swim. That's what he was saying. So, but
No, what I do want to say is that this has been a very methodical approach as any other mission I led, and this is just by far the most strategically important thing I've ever been a part of. So yeah, so I've been identifying talent. We have some mutual friends who I'm still courting to get on the team. I'd love to have your support on the team. But yeah, this has been a really methodical planning process up until, and to be honest, yes, I had very good knowledge or a good inkling that Tina Smith was going to step down because she was doing insider trading like 6 different times during
what?
COVID. Yeah, so while everybody else was on lockdowns and abiding Walz's crazy laws, Tina Smith was getting the luckiest hits ever on the stock market, investing in Minnesota small health companies that with penny stocks that then blew up into $100,000 investments. Sometimes they're done by her husband, but even the left wing media was going after her. So we knew that it would be a very difficult run for her this cycle. We were not expecting her to step away as early as she did on February 20th.
Yeah, she
Um,
she made an early announcement.
yeah,
So so do you think that Tina did that strategically to give
yes,
somebody?
yes.
I
Peggy.
mean,
I
we
mean,
all
Peg.
know they're leaning towards
Yeah,
Peggy. We all
yeah, yeah.
know it.
Well, Peggy announced that same day. So
Yeah.
they tried to, they're trying to anoint Peggy. Al Franken has already endorsed Senator Al, former Senator Al, when he got after he got Me Too'd out of the Senate. He's endorsed Senator Elizabeth Warren. She's endorsed Peggy. Keith Ellison has endorsed Peggy. The Minnesota Secretary of State, some lady not worth even remembering her name, she endorsed Peggy. So all the DFLers and Democrats are endorsing Peggy. And then there's the queen of the Washington Pax, Craig, who's traveling to Minnesota right now. And she's raised a ton of money because she's in tight with all the Washington swamp people.
Yep.
So she's raising a lot of money. So I think they're going to have, they are suiting up for a very, very bloody primary. I don't even know if Craig goes for the endorsement because she's trying to position herself as a non-radical, or Flanagan at least just owns that she's crazy. So I think they're gonna have. I think they're
She
gonna
might
have a very,
actually even use those words. So
yeah. I think they're gonna have a very bloody primary where I'm building a very high performing team. We're now leaning into the fundraising process, and I'm trying to build a not the endorsement for like a check in the box. Like the for me, the endorsement is I have a high performing team that then I scale up for the primary and the general. So essentially, just I'm trying to build the foundation of a good team that I can then scale up after that.
how's how's the how's the wife processing all of this? Because you guys, she's followed you around with your career, and so here you are now, going from what is ostensibly a very private way of living and fighting. That's honest. Like it's a
No,
very private.
that's a it's very astute of you to know that, but not know my background. uh,
I,
because my I'm not gonna
touche,
call her
sir. I
my
I right here felt that.
Uh, I, but no, but seriously, TC, I'm not even gonna call her my better half. I'll call her my better 7/8. She hates politics. She hates the political theater. She loved it when I was doing the quiet, secret, sexy missions behind the scenes, and I could be gone for long periods of time or doing very dangerous things behind the curtain. But that is the part that she hates as well. Is that she wants to have privacy. She left her family up in northern Minnesota because they kind of have like a a brand attached to their name that she wanted to get away from and just to live a private, quiet life. And she picked me
Yeah,
because
I was
I
like,
was
here you
gonna.
are ruining that for her.
Exactly, brother. Seriously.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of consternation, but I'm very blessed because at the end of the day, she recognizes that I couldn't just sit idle. Now that I can't do the sexy Navy SEAL mission, I still have all that fight left in me, and I still have a desire to serve our great nation. And this is the best way I think I can make an impact. And so I'm just truly blessed that she's supporting me in this effort.
Well, that's because that's huge. You never run for office. You never take on a public fight without bringing the collateral of your family into that situation, and um, sometimes they're fully on board without wanting, in your case, to be that public face, and sometimes they go out in the case of some political figures and blow the trumpet for the person. Uh,
Yeah, I'm like the
in,
opposite of Walls and Biden, whose
yeah,
wives both pulled them into the political spotlight so they could have the comfort of the executive offices. It's no secret that both Jill Biden and Walls' wife love that they're in the
yeah.
White House and the governor's mansion. Could not be more opposite with my relationship. My lady would be so happy if I were to just do anything other than
I mean,
this.
strangely enough, I've heard that on more than one occasion myself. So, so I probably don't get recognized the way you do though. So, but it has happened. They're like, "Hey, I know you from somewhere." I'm like, "No, no, now's not the time. You don't know me." But so you've weighed out all the possibilities as far as what it looks like to put yourself out there in the limelight. You know the enemy in the sense of philosophy on the left, but it looks like it's going to be a pretty hefty fight for you in Minnesota as well, with the Republican Party being kind of split. And here's where we're going to talk a little bit about. I'm not going to mention your competition, the
Yeah,
one that's announced right now by name.
yeah.
Um,
Can I address the first part of that though?
yeah,
So I think you are right, 100%. Like our own party in Minnesota. I mean, it's no secret that MNGOP is on fumes for funds, and the party itself is fractured with the quote unquote establishments versus the quote unquote grassroots. I truly, brother, and you know me, I don't like just talk unless I meet it. I look at that as it's a leadership opportunity for me. And my first challenge in this whole winning the general election next November is coalescing our movement, and that's being a leader. So yeah, I'm doing this weird dance where I have one foot on each side of these colloquial tracks, but as the lifelong guy who was adopted, a rifleman, Marine, Navy SEAL, like my bona fides, and then how my career's ended. If my bona fides doesn't yield credibility for action for liberty and grassroots, you're not going to find a more credible candidate. Especially when we talk about how I'm a constitutional conservative, constitutional Republican, and at the same time as I'm galvanizing our base, I also think that I had the ability to coalesce the more quote unquote moderates, establishment types, because they both sides of our spectrums know that this is a race that's a huge opportunity for Minnesota. It's a 20 or 30-year opportunity. If we screw this up, if we don't play nice with each other for the real evil, which is I would submit not even the Democrats, it's their failed ideology, their socialism ideology, their communism ideology that's growing in Minnesota. That is the true threat. And so if we don't get on a team, then we're going to fail. And I think that's on me. I'm the leader that needs to galvanize our team, and I'm confident I can do that. It's been people love my message so far, which is I'm not talking crap about anybody on any side of our political spectrum. The so what is this is what I'm about. These are my
right.
values. This is what I've done, and I want you on my team for this really important mission. And that's so far it's been really well received.
Well, and I do believe that there is something to be said for the leadership quality of anybody who's served in the military, to be able to walk into a situation and read the room, read the environment, get a feel for where
Absolutely.
the threats are, and where your allies are at, and where the good guys are, and also be able to recognize the weaknesses, not just in your opponents, but sometimes even in your allies and the people that are on your team, and actually capitalize on those weaknesses by making them strengths.
Gr- Absolutely, brother. I think you said it perfectly. Except I wouldn't say weaknesses. I would say shortfalls.
Well,
But yeah,
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 tomato,
semantics.
tomato.
But
Uh,
yeah, man, I think you're right on the money though. Seriously, that is the so what is being able to assess your talent pool. And that's what I'm good at, man. Like if I had like a superpower, I have a bunch of stupid fancy degrees and things like that. But you know me, I'm very unimpressive in real life. But if I had a superhuman talent, would
I
be to go into a room and identify the talented, the smart people, and then bring them on board.
just so we got some people that are tuning in and in the comments section. One of them is show producer level Tav, the angry vet, who is watching. He was like, he wants a recap of who this is. This is Adam. He is running for Senate in Minnesota to finally flip a Senate seat in Minnesota away from the progressive left, the hardcore left in Minnesota. And he's a former SEAL. Tav, don't get Tav. The angry vet's he's brown water Navy. We let him stick around because we like him and he does good work. But I have to be careful because he's tougher than I am, and he has a beard that'll, if he shows up here, he'll wrap me in his beard and save me for dinner. But yeah, so Tav, this is Adam. So share this out, Tav. We love having you here. You know that, and we love your support. You have kept the channel going more than one occasion. So when you look at the shortfalls in Minnesota right now within the GOP, and you know where I come from. We've talked briefly, and you know some of the people that I associate with and hang out with.
Yeah,
I tend to be, less, far less GOP and far more small L libertarian. Tend to very much lean towards people with strong libertarian ideals. And I think that has allowed me to be able to look at both of the two parties that people now, refer to euphemistically as the duopoly or the uniparty. Obviously, there's a different set of weaknesses or shortfalls in both. But as you look at some of the infighting that's going on, some of that has some of that is a fair criticism. And the neocon label gets thrown around a lot, just thrown around a lot, and a lot of people use the term neocon, have no idea what they're talking about. They don't know what
yes,
they don't know what a neocon is.
yeah,
They've heard it other places, um, and when you ask them to clarify, well, so do you mean neocon or West Coast Straussians or something like that? They kind of like, well, I don't even know what that is. Well, then you can't really tell me that you know what a neocon is. But some of the people who consider themselves these radical, earth-moving activists within the movement of the Republican Party in Minnesota have kind of come after you and have had some pretty hard things to say. And one of those questions came up when you were on with Jake and Mega Jesse, when you were doing Jake's show, Duesenberg show, and Jesse kind of pushed you a little bit and wanted to know about the Nikki Haley thing. And I know that you weren't 100% satisfied with how that situation played out, as by way of answer. And so can you give us some background and in some depth about what happened in that Nikki Haley situation? Because having gotten
yeah,
to know you, I know that you're not a Haley person.
yeah. Well,
But your
I guess
answer
first,
your answer needs clarification.
yeah, I guess first off, nobody has called me neocon except for one guy in Minnesota. To be fair, nobody except for
I'm
one guy.
trying I'm still offering him the opportunity. I'm
uh,
offering him the opportunity to come on because I
yeah,
do this with
yeah,
everyone. So
yeah,
I'm trying to not burn too many
yeah,
bridges, but I'm getting
yeah.
about this far from not caring.
It's fine. And to Mega Jesse's questions on the whatever the Action for Liberty podcast was, I think it's great. I mean, and your follow up question, and I'll get to it because it's important. But having these flush outs now is great, so we can move forward and then put the truth out there. Number one, but more importantly, the questions aren't going to get easier when I'm going against Peggy Flanagan or Angie Craig with the left wing media bias. So if we can't have the hard flesh outs amongst peers and on friendly networks, then what am I doing, right? So the background with the Nikki Haley thing is at the time when I was getting ready to run for CD3, my lady, her half of her family, actually not half, probably 4/5 of her family is still up in the northern part of Minnesota, and they are as Trumpy gets. They've had the signage for 2024 since January of 2022. The other 1/5 of her family is in the CD3 area, and one of her aunts that lives in the CD3 area held a fundraiser for Nikki Haley that I attended with my lady. I actually don't think I show up on the FEC report, but I actually think that my lady wrote the check for the two of us, and then they just split up the campaign. And I know that happens now because I'm doing that. When couples send money, I usually split it up so it shows like I get twice the donors. But I went to a Nikki Haley fundraiser to support my girl's family. And then later on, when I was there, I ran into her, like Nikki Haley's team, and they then contacted me to say, hey, we know your story, adopted Marine, Navy SEAL, hometown hero. Would you be willing to lend your name to our leadership team, so we can like publish this and like essentially utilize your brand so we can look cool? And so I said yes. And that's truly the end of it. I didn't like work for their campaign. I didn't do a public endorsement. I took no part in the campaign whatsoever. But certain people are trying to make it sound like I worked or am a donor or had any sort of capacity with the Nikki Haley campaign. And really it's just me supporting my girlfriend's family.
So, and that's one of those places for, and you knew I wanted to talk about this. I mean, we didn't go
Actually, I
through.
didn't, but I'm happy to talk about it.
Oh.
I didn't,
Well,
I
when
didn't get a read through.
I
I just came to talk about whatever you wanted to, brother.
yeah.
I thought we had some good philosophical conversations.
Oh, we will. I just wanted to address this because I'd be remiss if I didn't, because people have asked.
Yeah.
I heard one of the things that you said was that you, at the time, in I'm trying. I'm going to paraphrase it because there's
Yeah.
no need to rehash the whole thing. Basically, what you were saying is like, I just, yeah, I wasn't really thinking about what the implications of that could be.
Yeah,
Which,
that's a fair assessment. Clearly now I would not, it was a lesson learned, 2 years ago that I can't go rewrite history. For me, it was just supporting my girlfriend and her family. That was the so what. I did not realize that it was going to be a big deal. Well, I don't think it's a big deal now, but it definitely merits clarification.
yeah, it's because it's been that one segment. It was a great conversation that you had with Deuce and them. That one segment has now been played and replayed over and over and over again, and it's been one of those places where people have asked me like, well, you're going to have Adam on, and I'm like, yeah, well, how do you feel about the Haley thing? And I was like, I was in the Republican Party as a vice chair in my county, supporting some people that I know now, that I personally know now, are literal neocons. But I didn't know any better. I was just kind of in that camp of, oh, Republican good. Excuse me. And so I think it's very easy to get enmeshed into a political system, especially with a party that you think, for the most part, or maybe even rightly so, aligns with where you're at on your values, and realize that that's not always the case. That they're not everybody that's in a particular party is always aligning with your values. Just like not everybody who wears a Democrat label for voting these days is necessarily your philosophical opponent. I have neighbors that are Democrats that probably vote closer to the way I would vote on a lot of things than some of my Republican friends would. As you look at it now, and you think about that affiliation without having to go in, and there again, the affiliation, I think you've explained how that happened and why, and I think it's a fair personal assessment and explanation. Going forward, as people come and they have some concerns because all they've heard is this negative about it, how are you going to demonstrate not just denounce the label of neocon on yourself, but how are you going to demonstrate to people, look, I'm not this warmongering war hawk, you know, which sounds funny coming from a guy from the 82nd Airborne to a SEAL. Like,
Yeah.
like, how are you going to move into that world, operate in that world,
Yeah.
where people
Well,
are going to assume that you must be a war hawk and a neocon
well,
because you're in the military and you want to blow things up?
again, the other part of that, brother, is it's so funny when people paint me because I was an officer as a war hawk. Um, but I was enlisted as much as I was an officer, and I didn't retire as like a general or something. I was a tactical battlefield commander. Like I wasn't a field grade officer. I wasn't a general grade officer. I was actually kind of unique in that, as you know, but maybe probably the majority of your audience won't realize this is whether you're officer or enlisted at about the 10 to 12 year mark in your career, you kind of promote yourself out of the battlefield. Even for an enlisted, you become a senior enlisted advisor or a senior enlisted leader, and you're providing high ranking officers mentorship so they can command their units. So right when I was about to promote myself out of the battlefield as enlisted, I reset my career and became back as a junior officer, right back in the trenches again. And then right when I was in the cusp of becoming a field grade officer and promoting myself out of the battlefield again, that's when my career was ended. So I'm very unique in that, all of my 9 deployments were on the tactical in the trenches. And to people who in the military, they definitely get it. But to people who, some of your listeners who weren't in the military, there are no people who served in the trenches who are for pro-war. There's nobody who's actually like the guy and gal who was getting blown the f up, who's burning the poop in the burn pits, uh, who's watching thousands of people get killed. Nobody is for that, especially when you get a little bit older and you start to learn about history and the basis of our Constitution and policies and international policies and relations. And for me specifically, I didn't go over it, but at the end of my career, I kind of nerded out a little bit, and I don't hold this against me, but I got a master's at Harvard in international relations, another couple master's certificates in international security and nuclear deterrence, and then just finished up an MBA, and I'm a couple credits shy. And my MBA was at Johns Hopkins. The other masters were at Harvard. Um, but there's nobody who's been on the ground for that long specifically who is for pro-war. It just doesn't happen plainly. And now to have the intersection of being there, sacrificing so much, leaving so much blood on the battlefield, and then learning, from the academic intersection of why it happened. And
Mm-hmm.
Iraq was the worst foreign policy decision of the last probably 70 years of the United States. And I can
Say that
talk about it
again.
from,
Say that again, because you threw a number out there that I don't know if everybody who knows you or doesn't know you, I should say, or is even listening, realizes the number that you just threw out. How many years in the last how many years was the worst decision?
I think Iraq was probably the worst U.S. foreign policy decision in the last 70 years.
70, folks. He said, see, it's like you've heard me talk about the last
I mean, the
80
only
some.
more, I mean, that's since Vietnam, right? Where we also lied to the American people to get into a war with the Gulf of Tonkin resolution. I mean, I think you go right from Vietnam to Iraq.
Right. Well, yeah, and with actually, fighting a bunch of other tiny little wars in between all of that.
Yeah, yeah, but I'm
All
talking
based on
about
the same. Yeah.
starting a large scale, decades long war
Yeah.
where it takes the majority of a generation's youth. Everybody in my youth had a different upbringing because of the global war on terrorism. And for the record, when I raised my hand on my 18th birthday, I thought I was going to go kill terrorists in Afghanistan or people that wanted to harm the United States of America. I did not know I was going to go and fight a war in a foreign land that I couldn't even find on a map at the time.
Oh, yeah. Uh, and I think that's been, kind of the experience of, a lot of the folks that either had family in or they themselves served. I mean, you heard a lot of the testimony from people at the rally, the Defend the Guard rally in and of itself. I happened to serve at a time where I just kind of, for lack of better, terminology, was able to dodge the bullets. but they tried real hard. Boy, did they try real hard to get us into something while I was on active duty.
We kind of detoured your question though. Your original
No,
question
it's
is
fine.
how do I separate myself or show bona fides?
Yeah.
Through
So
my
that people aren't able, especially now that you gave us your pedigree, Harvard and everything else, everybody's going to think that I'm interviewing a deep state asset now. So thanks a lot, Schwarze. I just let out credit.
well, then they weren't listening to my 9 deployments in the trenches where I was burning shit.
That
Then they glossed over that part. But again, it's through my actions, not being a politician, not speaking. I mean, you know that I showed up and spent the whole day fighting through all the radicals outside, which was one of my most difficult infills to get into the Defend the Guard rally, and I took a
Yeah,
lot of
that
heat
is
from
not
it.
a lie, folks. He literally had we were sending out parties looking for him.
Yeah.
We had we had soldiers on the ground trying to get Adam
I'm,
into the rally. It was
I'm in
amazing.
it. I'm the U.S. Senate candidate for the GOP, trying to infill through 60,000 purple-haired radicals to get to the thing that I showed to on the Defend the Guard rally, and without naming names or being a woe is me, that I took a lot of political headshots for being there for that. It's a Minnesota state issue. It's not a
Yeah.
federal issue, but it's something I believe in, and that's kind of my so what is when. And I told you that when I believe in something, I don't
Yes.
just talk about it. I show up, and it's so how I prove to people who want to see, what my true value sets are. I'll show up.
Right. Well, and just so people are aware, one of the things, and I make no bones about this. One of the things I said to Adam was, "Thank you for being here. We really, I appreciate it. I know the team appreciates it. Please stay with us. Don't abandon us." And his right, no thought. He said, "I have advisors that told me not to do this, and I'm still here because it means that much. And I will never let anybody say that somebody who's running for the federal state level office, and I use federal state as opposed to government, but anybody who's running for the federal level, just because something is particularly a states' rights issue doesn't mean that they can't or shouldn't have a voice. In fact, sometimes the fact that they will support that is huge. That is a massive thing for someone who is running for an issue outside of the purview of the state or outside of the purview of the federal government. When they're running for that office and they're willing to speak to that and say, yeah, we need everybody to get on board with this, that's huge. That's absolutely 100% an issue of communicating the level of integrity and character that a person has. And I mean that in defense of anybody that would speak and to detract from why you would be there. And I think it also speaks to the reality that no matter which way you look at it, you have picked up the pulse of the burgeoning populist movement within the Republican Party that has said enough is enough with this endless warfare state, the endless funding of everybody else's wars, and the endless amount of American service members being sent overseas to die to fight other people's battles. What in a campaign sense, as you run up against other Republicans who may be wanting to get the nomination and the endorsement, as you go into it, what are you going to do then to take your position, which is really kind of on almost an anti-interventionist stance? I don't know where you stand specifically.
That's how I would describe my foreign policy, and that in those exact words. I'm a non-interventionalist.
Okay, thank you. You made it easier. So as you enter into the
Every country
fore,
has the right to defend itself from legitimate threats, but I'm not using American resources, specifically where I have big red lines is American blood, to project power for anything that is not an American first objective.
you heard it, folks. He does not want American lives lost for other people's defense. It-
Yeah, and
so
I
you,
think that's a very good point, TC. Specifically, America continuing to outsource other nations' national security is persona non grata for me. I am for the discontinuation of Americans being outsourced to provide security that other nations are outsourcing because they are not spending their own resources. They are not building their own defense assets. And then therefore they expect the gap to be fulfilled by Americans, our money, and really our blood. That's the big red line for me.
Yeah. So you have this very strong non-interventionist position that you've come to, through literally battled yourself into this position because you've seen it. You know what it looks like.
Absolutely.
Now you're entering into the fray with a lot of other people who are picking up on that and they're understanding it. Some of them are kind of Johnny come latelys to the position. They throw their finger in the air and check to see which way the wind's blowing, and then that's the direction they go as well. Others are come to it in much the same way you have through studying it out philosophically. How are you
Well, I
going to
think that
differentiate yourself?
unfortunately,
Go ahead.
TC, here's the sad truth is by having this conversation, in all reality, I am losing millions of dollars in DC swamp and pack money because all of those institutions, the American industrial complex, they want candidates on both sides of the aisle that are going to be a part of the forward American apparatus, military apparatus. So
So
that's why they do it.
you were saying that you believe you are risking support by even stating
I do.
this
Yeah,
early.
I believe that I am risking financial support, absolutely, like in the tune of millions of dollars.
Fair, fair. I,
I mean, look at
I'm
Angie Craig. Angie Craig, how many millions of dollars does APAC and the other military industrial complex put into Angie Craig's coffers? I mean,
so what you're saying is if APAC knocks on your door tomorrow, well, you never know with APAC, that could be literally a thing for them. They're knock on your door and say, "Hey, we just want you to soften your language a little bit about this." You're going to tell them, you're going to give them the Massey and tell them to pound sand.
no, absolutely not. No, I'm not saying that. I'm more pragmatic than that. I will hear everybody. I always have adult conversations, even when it comes to the most ridiculous issues. That's what an adult does. They have conversations. They don't carte blanche and make statements. But what I will say is, and I hope that you've understood this about me by now, and I know everybody who's in my orbit who truly knows me, they know that I'm not for sale. I will not bend my moral compass, but I will absolutely have conversations. But I'm not for sale.
You won't take APAC money to change a vote.
Correct. I will not take anything to change what I think my moral compass is. But I always have the conversations to get educated on
Right.
issues. But yeah, I'm not for sale. That's what I will say unequivocally.
And well, and you know that
And yeah, I guess
there are organizations out there that will hear that and they will support somebody who will.
yeah. But I will also say though that no matter what I do, I will always be exceptionally transparent and have the conversations with you, the people that I work for, the constituents. So if I ever do something and you're like, hey man, like you took this money or you cast this vote, I will never shy away from explaining the why I did something. I mean, I'm trying to work for you. And that's one of the pillars I'm running on actually is transparency in government. And that starts with me.
I wanted to put something up here. Somebody that you and I both know, a good friend of mine, Rebecca, said we made allies this week in the Minnesota I think she means legislature, in the Minnesota legislature for in the GOP for defend the guard simply because Adam spoke at the rally. We have more authors committed because he allied with us on this state issue, and I think that speaks to what I was saying, which is doesn't matter if you're running for Senate at the federal level. Um, you can have a positive impact on the movement here in the state, and that's what Rebecca is leaning into. When it comes time, will you debate other Republicans if they decide to have a debate for the Senate runoff?
Uh, it depends. It depends. I mean, it truly does depends. If there's other viable candidates getting in, maybe. I just don't foresee that happening right now. I don't want to be cocky or aloof, but I think that the people in Minnesota understand that I'm a legit candidate, a very serious candidate for a very serious race, and I'm developing a very good team and I'm doing very good fundraising. I don't know how much it would benefit me at this point. Again, I'll always have the conversations. But I do look. It's very analogous to Trump when it was he was the guy. Why would he allow himself to get beat up, to spend resources, to let
Right.
little soundbite hits get out there that would detract from his campaign when the real enemy was the radical Democrats? But
Well, but I think
it's a moving target.
well, sure, and debates can be tough. Just because it's hard to. You must have a dog.
Yeah.
Mine's old and doesn't get off the couch. That is not a comment about pets looking like their owners either. By the way, I started my day with the workout, so people tend to lean on debates still, despite the fact that what we know about debates is that they are very much, for lack of better terminology, what you said, just a place to clip out sound bites. And a lot of times, what they end up doing is presenting the debate as an issue of if you can't handle, and I'm not there again, not speaking to you. We've all heard this tactic used. If you can't handle doing a debate, then how are you going to handle holding office or whatever it is? It's kind of like what you said at the beginning. Like if I can't have these kind of conversations now, early on, what's going to happen when we're in the fire of a campaign? And
Yeah.
I think that's what has hurt some people. They have said, "Oh yeah, I would do that," and then later on they'll like, "Nah, I don't know if it's in my best interest." Which is why I'm glad that you answered the way you did, because you said, "Hey, it's a moving target, and I don't know." When you're invited to candidate forums, which are far different than debates, are you going to find yourself, you think, prone to showing up for candidate forums where everybody's kind of getting the same questions asked, or?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. Good question. Yeah, I'll get with the team on that. But bottom line, brother, is I will do anything that furthers the mission, and I'm not going to do anything that risks the mission because of a side quest.
Well, yeah.
The mission is building a great team. I'm going for the endorsement. I think the people don't on your network haven't realized that I'm building a good team for the endorsement, which is not a check in the box, but selling my value system and who I am as a man, so that I have those Spartans at our base that I scale up for the general election cycle, and then it's donors. So it's money. It is truly money, and especially because I'm not turning down PACs per se, but I'm going to people with individuals. I'm trying to make this a grassroots campaign for fundraisers as well, and those are the two main things that I'm worried about right now.
When you look at the difference in the mindset between even conservatives in urban Minnesota, and that now includes not just like Minneapolis and St. Paul and the Twin Cities suburban area, but even places like Rochester, third largest metro area in the state with the Mayo Clinic there and whatnot. Conservatives in those urban areas are a lot different than what's euphemistically referred to, thanks to Governor Walz, as rocks and cows of Minnesota. The conservative flavor, the populist conservatism of rural Minnesota is a lot different than the conservatism in the urban areas. What are you going to do to bridge the gap between those? Because there again, you have very much a down-to-earth perspective on a lot of things, but some people are going to, who maybe did a better job of research than I did. Once again, I still don't know how I missed that. That's part of your story.
Yeah.
I had everything else, but I missed that. But
Yeah.
how are you going to look at the guy who's never even been to college and go, I can relate to this guy, but I've been to Harvard? Because a lot of times that's a tough wall for a lot of people to scale.
Again, you're leading the Harvard thing, and not that I spent a couple years in Harvard, but I spent 10 years burning shit in Marine Corps trenches.
Sure.
I dug
No,
into
I
my
understand
fighting
that,
hole.
but
Like, you don't lean into that too hard, brother.
I'm not, but I know
I'm
how
much
people
more.
in rural Minnesota think. I just
Yeah,
know
much
how
more
they
blue
are.
collar than a Harvard officer, I promise you. But how I succeed in that is this right here. Is I do these uh, throughout the endorsement process, not again for the check in the box, but so I'm building it for any mission. The most important part of building the team is getting people on board with the why. Why are you doing this? Why am I doing this? And you have to sell them on the actual mission. And I think that in greater Minnesota, I think that people are looking for a leader. I think they want somebody who's, like you said, I'm grounded, I'm pragmatic. But I truly want to convince people like this is my bedrock of my principles and truly I guess my character. And then once I have them like on our team, just say, I need some trust, team. Like they're hills I die on. First Amendment rights, Second Amendment rights, deficit spending. Those are the hills that I die on those hills. But that's not what I'm running on. And I say that now. I'm not running on that. I need to run on issues that are going to do 50 plus one. And Hennepin County has, I think, a quarter of the voting population of the entire state. So the issues that I'll be running on, it will take a lot of polling, a lot of resources to make sure that the issues that I'm running on and the messaging gets 50 plus one. I mean, truly, that's how you win an election in a very
Well, so
pragmatic way to put it.
that's a great example. So you look at a place like Hennepin County, or then it's
Yeah,
neighbor Ramsey, and you're trying to bridge that gap and
yeah,
get into what is ostensibly a stronghold of the DFL. With we got Nick Duggar in the chat, asking about conservatism in urban areas, which I think he's picking on me more because Nick can do that. I don't mind, um, because I labeled conservatism in urban areas, and we all know what that actually is. But you do see a lot of selling out to like a DEI type agenda and other things within these urban areas. What are you going to do to pull votes away from people who ostensibly, even Republicans that vote for that kind of thing? And like, what's your strategy look like? Because you just made it clear you can't win in Minnesota without pulling the urban areas, the big metro areas. You have to pull those. And how is a guy like you going to cross that line?
yeah. I do think we have a couple things going for us. One is that we haven't had a candidate in Minnesota in 20 years who can galvanize the base, can raise money, and when I say raise money, go to the DC swamp and convince the administration, which I again I'm unapologetically doing. I'm actually going to DC tonight to go meet with more of the cabinet members and the other congressional reps to get them on board. And when I'm not selling out, I'm saying, hey, I'm the team. Minnesota is in play. Contact your donors nationally because we have another Navy SEAL who's about to flip another U.S. Senate seat. I need you on board. And you have to do both those things. I have to go to the Defend the Guard. I have to go to War Road, Minnesota, and Albertville, and Austin, and everywhere in between, and really sell myself to greater Minnesotans. These are the values that I stand on, but not pull my positions to ones that are unwinnable in a general election. And where I say that we also have something going for us. It's this thing called the failing Democratic Party, where they are
If you
pulling.
hold on, your audio is kind of rubber banding a little bit, and I don't know if there's something on with your phone, but you're getting kind of scratchy. Maybe you froze. Looks like Adam might have froze. So we'll see um let's see what we got going on there. It's very strange. Must have been saying something he shouldn't have said. I'm trying to text him. Oh, weird. So what? Yeah, it looks like something happened with his phone. We'll see if he can get back in here. Uh that's what you guys wanted to see, my ugly mug. Um, No, Nick, I think you make a fair point, Nick, about conservatism. I think I use that term very loosely, um, because there are people in the metro areas, especially the Twin Cities, that think of themselves as conservative because they've always voted Republican, and we know that the Republican Party is not necessarily the paragon of conservative or even constitutional traditional values. So then, what we have to look at is how are you going to take somebody like an Adam and reach across that line and actually start to bring libertarian type, um, conservative type values. No, Nick, uh, I know I like it when people pick on me in the show. I love interacting with people. Oh, there we go.
We back? We good?
Yeah, we're back. You started a rubber band and then you froze. So,
No, okay.
but so you were kind of, at the on the cusp of explaining what you were gonna to do to reach across, and get into those more urban areas where people they do tend to vote very much to the left, into the DFL side. And uh, you can give us a briefer synopsis if you'd like, as far as what it's going to look like for you to be able to take those areas.
Yeah. Well, first off, Minnesota is this thing called the Cook Index. So Minnesota is a statewide entity. It's only a D+1. So it goes to 24. R24 is like a Matt Gates district in Florida, or D24. That's almost like Omar in Minneapolis. She's a very heavy D in CD5. But CD5 is one of 8 congressional districts in Minnesota. And we actually have 1.6 million dedicated Republican voters to 1.4 million Democrat voters that are committed Democrat voters. So there's actually more Republican voters. It's an independent voter alliance. It's a non partisan index on the voting. What we truly miss in Minnesota is a candidate that is common sense, pragmatic, and right now gives all those Democrat and certainly independent voters an off ramp. Uh, I will be at my whole point of running this campaign is, if you're somebody in Minnetonka or Edina, you maybe have never voted for Republican your whole life, but you don't like what the Democrat Party is right now, and they have a 25% approval rating nationally, and continuing to fail because they are just rudderless and don't stand for anything. And me, somebody who's been a lifelong patriot, somebody who is an unapologetic American enthusiast, but I'm also very reasonable, common sense. I mean, you don't have to sacrifice the decency to have common sense legislature, and that's where I'm going to fill that gap in Minnesota. And I don't know if it also, if it, my camera and everything blipped out before this part, but that's why we haven't won in 20 years in Minnesota. Not because there's more Democrats than Republicans. We just haven't had a candidate that's truly galvanized our grassroots, our base, and then has been able to successfully fundraise, and then to say, hey, I fundraised, base, don't leave me. This is what I'm running on. And for all you moderates and all you Democrats, look at me. Look at what I've done for our country, and look at how reasonable I am. And I think that you'll be happier. And to be in one sentence, this is what I tell people, like when I meet them out in town, is I want you, if you can't be in your house, TC, you would rather have me watch over your family than Angie Craig or Peggy Flanagan. I want the person that you would trust to watch over your family. That's what this race is about for me.
So I want to shift now a little bit away from the idea of, what sets you apart from opponents, and where you are philosophically. So I know you're a constitutionalist. Did we? And I think he froze again. I don't know what's going. Might be weather. I don't know. Well, I wasn't expecting to have to fill time again. Very strange. Phone technology. Messaging him again. Yeah. Um So what I want to talk to him about is, philosophically, where does he draw from? And many of you know where I draw from. I go back to the founders for a lot of things, for their faults. I cannot emphasize how much I am tired of hearing about, well, the founders didn't get it all right. Well, no one has, folks. No one in the history of the American um, republic has ever gotten it all right. No one's gotten it right. Many of you have heard my critiques of Lincoln. I am not a Lincolnian. Um, I cannot I cannot abide the idea that we as a country are better off because of Lincoln, that the republic is better off because of Lincoln. Now, that being said, we cannot rest so solely on the idea of, well, if we could just have what Thomas Jefferson said, and that would be the only way that we could do politics in the United States. Well, there has to be some sort of philosophical evolution, and some sort of philosophical workaround, if you will, where we can begin to understand how we take the principles of the founders of this republic, how we take the principles and the philosophy that was what launched this republic onto the face of the earth, the Lockean type philosophy, the Rutherfordian type philosophy, what a lot of people will call classical liberalism today, that has this really strong Aristotelian root to it, and say, okay, here's what the founders said, here's what they warned us against. Now, how do we battle that? And I think that's something that's missing from a lot of conversations that get had in situations like this, whether it be, me talking to Adam or me talking to someone else. What's at play? And when I say what's at play, what I mean to get to is, do we want the Constitution to evolve? No, we don't want the Constitution to evolve. In fact, that's been one of the greatest problems. And when you look at the way people handle the Constitution today or handle the Bill of Rights, even so-called conservatives, even some people who think that they're constitutionalists, have an evolution type view or perspective of the Bill of Rights, of the Constitution itself. And that's how, I was having a conversation with Kevin, who's watching, the other day, and we were talking about see if we're back from him again. Oh, we'll just keep going. We were talking about the use of the Alien Enemies Act versus the Alien Friends Act, and even the idea of the suspension of the writ of habeas corpus and who's responsible for that. Well, a lot of people, when you talk to them, they will claim to be constitutionalists. But the truth of the matter is that they don't understand clearly the delineation and the differences between the responsibilities of Congress. They don't understand the difference of the responsibilities between the executive branch and the judicial branch. Someone doesn't like us. I think you're talking about.
I think the deep states cut me off, man, or China. China doesn't want these conversations to continue. We're getting too close to home, brother.
you got to say China. I don't know how. I can't do Trump, so I can't. So I was filling time, and I probably
apologize for the technical difficulties.
Oh,
very JV.
This is so much better than it was ever before on Zoom. Trust me.
Okay.
I used to do this with Zoom. So I was asking you philosophically, as you approach, let's say that you get in, you beat whoever the DFL puts in, and you go into the Senate. You're a freshman in the Senate, and we all know that freshmen really have no power. That's just how it's just how it is. You've been in that position on more than one occasion.
Yeah.
Um, you, but you have a philosophy, and so, Nick asked, if you've read much, or do you think you've come to a lot of your views through intuitive thought? Uh, have you studied Locke or Rothbard or Jefferson? And
Yeah. I love
in
all those
in
guys.
so so are you going to, how much is that going to influence you, and what is your perspective constitutionally and philosophically of what your role in the Senate is supposed to be?
Yeah. So great question to whoever Nick is out there. Big fan of Locke, big fan of Jefferson, big fan of the Jeffersonian doctrine, and that the federal government should really just do two things: provide for a smart American defense, not an expansive American defense, uh, but national security. Have a border that's part of our national security, but really the largest proponent of the federal government should be to promote American business enterprise abroad. Business enterprise, promote American business. That it should be pretty much the main function of the federal government. Anything other than that, and national security is better done at the state and even local governments. I would advocate for. So yeah, big fan of Jeffersonian doctrine and Locke. My personal favorite short read, which is my like number one read as far as like people. If you want to get to know me, all you have to read is War is Racket by General Smedley Butler, who's a two-time Medal of Honor recipient. And you could do like the audiobook and it'd be done in like 30 minutes. But it was written post World War One, and it was about the military industrial complex. And I swear to God, you could have read it like last week and you'd think it was like, oh my God, this is hot off the press. But
Yeah,
it's not. But
Butler
it's
was
actually,
not a fan. He was not a fan at all.
yeah, but it talks about the industrial complex and who gets rich and who bleeds on the battlefield, and there's a very difference and divide in which Americans are doing what. It's a very passionately written book from somebody like me who's been on the battlefield, and that's probably that the U.S. Constitution and the Bible are like the three books that I would recommend anybody.
When you look at the Constitution today, and that was one of the things I was talking about, is that a lot of people who consider themselves even constitutionalists, and I'm not pointing this at you, but you've run into people like this. When you'll know what I'm describing. They'll say, "Oh yeah, I'm a constitutionalist," but then they'll have a very evolutionary view of the Constitution, that the Constitution and the Bill of Rights has to evolve because the founders didn't foresee X or Y.
There we go. Now we're gonna have some good conversations. Yeah, that's interesting.
So, and they like to apply that very much to the Second Amendment, right? Well, the founders didn't see a 30-round magazine on a
Our tank. The founders didn't
or
see a tank.
tank,
I love hearing
right,
that
or
one.
a tank, which is actually, lots of people had private gunships, by the way, back then. So lots, but so you'll have one aspect, we'll see this have this evolutionary perspective about the
Yeah,
Constitution and the Bill of Rights.
yeah,
The left, but the right does the same thing on things like, even due process, and who has a right to due process in the United States and whatnot. Are you going to lean on, people like the Federalists and even the Anti-Federalists, like Jefferson was? Are you going to lean on them as you serve in the Senate and take counsel from them
yeah.
more?
Good question. I can answer that already. First off, great question. And as I said already at the very beginning of your show, is whenever I enter a room, I'm never the smartest people, I'm always able to surround myself with very talented individuals. That's how I've been a high performing mission commander, is building high performing teams. And if you look at the people behind the scenes on my team, and we have some mutual friends who are on my team, the basis of my team, the foundation of my team are constitutional conservatives. So that's the people that I surround myself. And again, I will always step into the room and have the conversations, even if you're a radical Marxist. I will have the conversations. but where I philosophically align, it is the fundamental constitutionalists, you know, the reformed libertarian type people. Those are the people who I surround myself. That's where I align on my philosophy and values. But I always have the conversation. But when I take advice, it's usually from those people who I'm you know, are more aligned, I guess. And but again, that's how you figure out the truth, right? And I didn't always have this value set. I have these conversations with everybody, and then, you know, and frankly, I have a lot of people who are more savvy on the Constitution than I am. But it seems like whenever I have those kinds of conversations with people who are more entrenched in the constitutional way, the foundational way, that I seem to get almost further drawn down that more.
So, uh, and I'm going to rely on hypotheticals. Obviously, we have to because you're not in office yet.
Yeah.
So hypothetically, you're in the Senate, and I'm trying to think of something in front of the Senate right now that I've been so focused on some local stuff that I haven't even. This is embarrassing. People are like, "How do you not know?" I said, "Because I'm focusing on all the local stuff right now, because that to me is the most important." Um, but let's say something comes in front of the Senate, and you're there, and you know President Trump is still president, and he's like, "I want the Senate to pass this," and you look at it, and you're like, I respect President Trump. I respect what he wants, but constitutionally, I don't I don't think that this is the right direction for us as a republic to be going. Will you will you be able to or find within yourself the ability to run the risk of alienating that
Yeah.
segment of the
Yes.
audience? I
That
mean,
that, that
that's tough.
that's what leadership is. And if I were to say yes or no, I have to follow up with a why. For every vote I owe you, the person, you know, the Minnesotan, and really America, it's U.S. Senate, but I owe every American, but specifically my constituents, my hypothetical constituents in Minnesota, why I voted on a bill that way. And just like I'm not for sale for special interest groups, I'm not for sale to maintain power either. Um,
What are some Oh, here, I'll bring this up. So Rebecca said something about the farm bill, and of course, anybody who knows Rebecca knows that she probably has the farm bill better memorized than most of the people who supposedly sponsor it. But let's say something comes in front of the Senate that would, you know, initiate a that would tread on states' rights when it comes to firearms.
Firearms? Oh, I mean, Second Amendment. I mean, that's one of those hills I really do die on. And the more I learn about the 2A rights, the more I become pretty emboldened. You know, that is something that sets America up for success. Was a bunch of people from across an ocean try to come over here and say, we're going to dictate how you do things, and our founding fathers is like, nope, and they were only able to do that because they had arms.
So if the Senate
I've got
proposes,
I've got like six firearms that all have FFL tags for suppressors and other things. I'm not giving up my stuff, and so I'm not going to ask you to give up
I'm going to ask
yours.
anybody else to do it either.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
so there has been some talk about red flag legislation at the federal level that would standardize and normalize, and you know what red flag is, you know, ERPOs, emergency extreme risk protection orders. You know, basically a family member or a medical professional or a social worker can just call up local law enforcement and say, hey, we think this person should have their firearms taken from them. No crime has been committed, but we're worried about their safety. Let's say somebody's able to convince the Senate and the House to take up legislation that would standardize that at the federal level, and that's been talked about. That has been talked about. Would you fight red flag legislation at the federal level and leave it solely in the hands of the state?
Yes. Again, that kind of legislature would be better enacted at the state level, and I'm just really reticent to take people's right to bear arms. Period. But again, you were talking about a hypothetical. I would have to see it, right? So I'd have to see what the attention's in the details, right? So like I would have to see what it is. But I'm very reticent to do anything that would take people's two-way rights, especially at a federal level. If anything, I'm more on the other side to give more power for the constitutional carry type situations. I mean,
So you'd be
there's
more
there.
willing to look at legislation that would give reciprocity to everyone to be able to
Yes,
carry a
yes,
firearm in the U.S.,
yes, yes.
regardless of state restrictions.
Well, again, let's look at like pragmatically what's going on. Where are the most prone cities for gun violence in the entire United States of America? Baltimore, New York, Chicago, Minneapolis is getting up there. What cities have the most gun legislature laws in the United States? Chicago, New York, Baltimore. So clearly, the more state and local legislature you pass to, quote unquote, protect people from guns, it's not working. And the obvious so what is because criminals don't give a damn about new laws. So you could pass 1,000 new laws and you're not going to create safer streets.
But Adam, just one more law and the criminal will finally obey.
No.
One
Yeah,
more.
it just
Just one more, I
it does
swear.
it doesn't work. It
It
does not work.
doesn't work.
It has not worked. The insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. One more law in Minneapolis, in Chicago, one more attempted, law in Minnesota will not. All you're going to do is restrict law-abiding citizens from protecting themselves. Full stop.
Well, folks, that was thanks for tuning in. Adam just ended the show. So no. So omnibus bills,
Don't like them.
don't like them. Do you how, where do you fall in things like continuing resolutions when it comes to the debt?
Don't like them. I mean, I'm pragmatic. I mean, I'm not in office, and so I have never been in elected office. To say that I know what I'm going to do would be a lie. Number one, and I also don't know the background because I have not served in that capacity. All I know is from somebody who is trying to run for transparency in government. The thought of passing 1,000 different things with a 50,000 page document at one time does not make sense to me from the position I have now. And also when we have more national debt than we have yearly GDP, meaning we pay more on our credit card than we make in a year in our national salary. That should be a big eye opener, awakening for people. And so deficit spending and continuing resolutions to increase debt. Uh, Deficit spending is another one of those hills I die on. For me personally, somebody who's fought all around the world and been to 70 plus countries, our actual biggest Achilles heel and critical vulnerability as a country is our debt, even more so than China.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was just talking to somebody the other day that people do not understand that other countries literally invest in our debt.
Yeah.
They buy our debt. I- they make money by buying our debt. That's just mind-boggling, and we're leaving that to our following generations. Um, when you look at how do I want to say this? Roe v. Wade was overturned in the first Trump administration by the Supreme Court. A lot of people gave credit to Trump for making some strategic,
Rightfully so.
right. No, I'm not. I'm
Yeah.
just saying he made some strategic
Yeah.
choices
He,
for
he
Supreme
crushed he
Court.
crushed it with the courts his first term, and then the Democrats were like, oh my gosh, the best thing or the worst thing Trump did for Democrats was his leaning in on the courts. And then the Democrats figured out during the Biden administration, and now Trump is going to hopefully have a 2.0 wave of constitutional court appointees that are going to continue to hopefully correct our judicial system. And yeah, the courts is honestly the best thing, the Supreme Courts, that I think is going to be Trump's legacy, other than that in the Middle East.
When you look at decisions like the overturning of Roe v. Wade and the move, even by some people who are supposedly on the right side of the spectrum, who want to take the issue of abortion and make it a federal issue as opposed to a states' rights issue or a states' issue, would you support keeping it in the states?
Yes.
Okay.
It's wrong philosophically for me as being a smaller government guy, and it's wrong for a winning issue for Minnesota specifically. Um, I think it's abhorrent what Walls and Flanagan have done to make it so you can have a child who was attempted to be aborted, born, and then allowed to pass. They removed legislature from the Minnesota laws that say that you have to provide care for an attempted abortion, and also, by the way, provide limitless abortion. And the radical left says, well, that doesn't happen. Well, just because I'm not going to go stab you in the face right now doesn't mean we don't pass it a law, make it a law where I can't do that. That's such a cop out thing to say because it doesn't happen means we shouldn't make it a law. It's really abhorrent what Minnesota and Walls and Flanagan have done, and Ellison. Um, but it is state law. I mean, it is constitutional in the state of Minnesota.
It belongs
I
in the
think.
hands of the state.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I can say all of those things at the same time, saying I am literally only on this planet because my mom chose adoption. So it is a very personal issue for me as well. I'm living and breathing proof that if you give life a chance, great things can happen. But I'm not out there to try to take away the state's rights. It's a state issue. At a federal level, I will provide resources to give women more options to choose life, to promote life. It's not a carrot and sticks issues for me. I remove the sticks. I only provide options and support towards expanding families because the Republican Party is now the party that supports expanding families.
I'm asking these questions because this is the kind of stuff that comes up at that federal level. Is you get
Yeah.
one side wants to at the federal level give protections across the country, and another one wants to restrict
And look,
things.
I'm going to tell you this now because I'm going to lose some people on our own party support. But I got to be honest. I'm a Christian. I'm adopted. I have a strong faith background. I don't run on my faith, but I'm also very pro IVF. And I know that there's some in our party that are anti IVF because of their religious beliefs. And I accept that and I respect that, especially as somebody who's a Christian. But I think we are really missing the target as a Republican Party to be on the team supporting families because I know personally uh, close to probably a dozen families now who've only conceived and some of them multiple times because of IVF. And so I'm an adamant supporter of federal resources and to get insurances where they have to support that because that's supporting families and the expansion of American families.
Right. Uh, I have a couple of people in the chat asking questions. Nick asked the other question. He's Where would you fall on the issue of home education? There again,
Love it.
states' rights issue for the most part.
Yeah, it's not I love Nick's questions. Actually, Nick's got good questions. But yeah, that is 100% a state's issue. I'm not decided on this issue, but I am very uncertain that the Department of Education really has a role in the American government. It does not seem like we've gotten a good bang for our buck for tax dollars. And I think that again, it's definitely a state's issue.
I will
But
tell I will tell people when they ask, the Department of Education at the federal level did exactly what it was designed to do. That's what it did. It did not fail. It did exactly what they wanted it to do.
which was what?
Uh, Screw up education.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, I don't necessarily disagree. It has not. It's become more politicized, more bureaucratic, and it is not. Our students are not doing better; they're doing worse. When I went to Minnesota public schools, we were like the fifth or seventh best in the entire country at the time, and our taxes were like middle of the road. And now Minnesota has some of the highest state taxes in the country, and our education's like 30th or 38th. It's terrible, and that's under just Walls, by the way. It's dipped like 10 or so points under Walls, so it's embarrassing as a Minnesotan. And yeah, so I understand why you're seeing a national trend of homeschooling. You're seeing a lot of charter schools take off, and I am 100% for parents being in charge of their children's education, whether it's deciding to homeschool or I've seen now these things where there's communities that they're kind of pooling their resources together to do kind of neighborhood schooling environments. And I think it's really unfortunate and sad that our state schools have become so terrible and parents don't trust them that is what is going on. But I absolutely support parents leading their children and especially in the education front.
Do you see parental freedom to educate falling within one of those non-enumerated natural rights of man within the Constitution?
Ooh, good question.
I do that once in a while. Don't expect it all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, again, yeah, you should have the freedom to lead your household how you want, as long as you're not infringing on other people's rights. I'm for that. I think it's unfortunate that that is what's happening because I think there's such a disparity and lack of faith in the systems right now. But yeah, you should absolutely be able to do that.
Because I think that's been one of the places where people are struggling the most. We have now several generations that have been raised strictly in government funded, government
Yeah,
operated school systems, and not realizing that public education as we know it now did not always exist in the US, and that
yeah.
it, especially with the inception of the Department of Education at the federal level, it did not improve things at all.
Yeah, I actually
Um,
have a kind of interesting vignette on that. Is I was just at the, as you know, I'm traveling all around the state to run for U.S. Senate, but I was just at the Republican Minnesota Seniors Conference, and they had a guest speaker. He was an author and also a former Normandale College professor. Normandale is a small community college in Bloomington, where I grew up, actually. And this guy was a reformed Democrat, and part of what made him a turn from being a Democrat to a Republican is as he was a teacher at Normandale, he was getting more and more homeschooled children in. And at first, his first inclination when he started getting these kids is he like wrote them off. I'm like, oh my God, these kids are going to be like crazy and indoctrinated and not good students. And then he very quickly found out that all the homeschooled kids were not only some of the better students in his classroom, but they were some of the best academically prepared and achieving students as well. And again, that was kind of the cause for turn like, oh my gosh, the systems aren't doing well. And you know, to your and I's values, when you're allowed to, when parents are put in charge of their children, some of these other non-traditional environments are surpassing the systems, right? The government systems.
uh, Crazy hypothetical because uh, I think it's worthy of having. If you haven't yet read it, I would strongly recommend that you read as you get ready to run, like really run now, like hit
Oh,
the
I'm really
ground
running
running.
now, brother. I promise you. It's a
No,
heavy
you
lift.
know what I mean though. It's going to heat up. It's like you're in the beginning. I know you're really running, but as the campaign time really starts to heat up,
Yeah.
uh, make time to read The Creature from Jekyll Island if you
Okay.
haven't,
Okay.
because the question I'm about to ask will you'll understand why. Would you support a move to do away with the Federal Reserve?
Yeah, I've been asked about that before, and I need to do more research on that. I've talked to a bunch of financial people, and almost everybody in the financial world who I've talked to comes to the almost the same conclusion: is it's great hypothetically, but there's no realistic way to do that. So I need to just get more educated on that.
Well, and it doesn't, and I don't mean this to be disparaging towards the people who are in that financial world, but it's kind of like talking about doing away with the Department of Education. People just can't fathom. You know what I mean?
I
Some
respectfully
people
disagree.
can.
Some of these people that I talk to are pretty daggone smart. I don't think it's analogous to the Department of Education. I think that would be much. I think there's a much easier argument to be made about the Department of Education versus the Federal Reserve, and not in whether it should or should not be, but how you would actually do that, the execution, and that's where again why this is where Republicans really separate ourselves from Democrats is the execution. Like they had these Green New Deals, like some of the stuff in like the Green New Deal, I'm sure not all of it was trash, but the problem is like with Democrats, they have no way to execute any of their policies. They're like in these vacuums and these hoity-toity, things that are just not realistic. Where Republicans, specifically me, if there's not a way to execute, like that's how you figure it out, right? You for power. What's the power? Well, we need to lean into nuclear because that's the how we actually get off of fossil fuels. Fossil fuels are like the holdover right now until we do nuclear.
Perfect.
fusion, but the executable process to get to nuclear fusion is nuclear power. And so with the Federal Reserve, the majority of the people with the big brain people I talk to are much more savvy on that than I am. They do not see a method of execution to removing that mechanism.
Uh, yeah, I definitely want to challenge you to read Creature from
Yeah,
Jekyll
yeah,
Island.
no, yeah, I'll do that, brother,
It
and
is
we'll come
it's
back
not
another talk.
it's not a horror story.
Yeah,
Well,
no,
it
no,
is,
yeah,
but not the same kind. You brought up nuclear, and I think that's
yeah,
another one, because one of the big conversations we are having at the federal level is, energy infrastructure,
yeah,
right? And
yeah,
you've got people on both sides of the aisles, chanting and cheering on the idea of electric vehicles.
yeah,
And we do not have the grid. We don't have the system federally or state-wise
yeah,
to support that. And wind generation and hydroelectric are not going to be enough to do that. Solar's damn sure not going to be enough to do that. But with nuclear,
yeah,
we could,
yeah,
if people were really serious about going to far more EV. But we've had people so scared of it, even especially at the federal level,
yeah,
that nobody wants to
because of
talk about
special
going
interest
back to it.
groups, dark money, left leaning media. But that should be, and if I get into the Senate, by the way, I want to be on the Senate Armed Forces Committee. I want to be on the Senate Intelligence Committee because my background yields to those, and I also, with my master's in nuclear deterrence, I know a little bit about nuclear. But that should be a huge layup for bipartisan support, and we have to. And here's why: the electric cars thing is cool. For the record, I'm for electric cars, but I'm not for the federal government putting their finger on the scale. Like either corporate America wants people, either you want to buy electric vehicle or you don't. It shouldn't take federal tax dollars to lean in on that scale, right? So I think that eventually those will do better, but without federal involvement. But what you didn't talk about is what's hugely important from a national security standpoint is the increasing bell curve of AI and the computing power needed, and then the power you actually need for the all this AI computing. I mean, that's why Google bought 3 Mile Island, and they're firing that nuclear reactor up again. We need nuclear power, and if we don't do it, it's going to be one of those things where somebody else is going to do it eventually. So we should again, as a bipartisan thing, we should be leaning to nuclear power, and then again, updating our energy infrastructure grid for nuclear power. With the nuclear fusion's probably, depending on who you talk to, 15 to 25 years away. I'm actually pretty optimistic on it, being closer to the 15-year mark. But nuclear fusion will be the thing in 15 years. But nuclear power is how we get there. And then going back to one of our conversations we had at the beginning of the show about where's the role of the federal government when I'm talking about the Jeffersonian doctrine and promoting American business interests, we should be the world premier people of exporting modularized nuclear reactors all over the
There we
world.
go.
And then
I was
and
just going
then
to ask you about that.
and then we're creating a safe world order, because almost every daggone world war and even regional war, they're always over what? Energy,
Energy.
fuel.
Yep.
Exactly, energy, fuel. So when you're creating a net positive energy source around the world, and oh, by the way, using American industry to do it. So again, it's American business interests exported abroad. That is how
You mean
we
free market use of energy?
weird. Yes, exactly. Exactly. I mean,
Uh,
we replace a coal power plant a month that China is exporting to Africa with a modularized nuclear reactor, and then we're actually again stymieing China's influence. I mean, exporting nuclear energy solves so many world problems and promotes American interest business. Like that's gonna be probably one of my main, if not my main effort, if I get elected to U.S. Senate.
and it's and for people who hear that who don't know, it's safe. It's
Yeah.
you don't export
Yes.
nuclear energy and somebody turns it into a dirty bomb.
No,
That's
it's
not how
completely different. It's completely different types of
yield.
uranium.
Totally different yield.
Yeah.
Totally different yield.
Which is
Um,
why it's, part of my French, why it's bullshit. We know that Iran is enriching uranium to weapons grade because it's a different type of uranium. So that's how we know that, by the way.
um, Kevin asked the question because this kind of goes back into economics, but economics ties into being able to do all sorts of things. And one of the things that has made the United States economy weaker over the years has been the abandonment of uh, a gold standard or a silver standard for our currency. We
Yeah.
are, and you know this, we are
Yeah.
strictly a fiat currency country. There is absolutely nothing of value behind it. Would you, would you be one of those people that would be willing to talk boldly about going back to some sort of gold or silver standard to back our currency?
I would love to, Kevin. I wish we never went off of it, frankly, but we did, and you can't put the toothpaste back in the toothpaste tube. We are so far removed now. What is so? Yes, I wish we could go back to. I think was a terrible idea. And by the way, it was supposed to be temporary. I think it was like 1971 or something. We went off of it, and of course, never. We'll never go back to it. That will never happen. But what is interesting is there's some new app platforms that you can essentially, I forget one of them, but you buy gold and it's held somewhere else, and you are trading then off of a new modern day gold standard. And there's some states, I want to say Utah. There's a couple of states in the United States that are they're bringing those apps into like their state government. So like they're promoting them within the state. I want to get smarter on it before I misstate something. But there's some new ways that kind of brings gold back into the thing, and then you have a tangible, um, something tangible, and that is very interesting. And also, I know that there's people that are smarter on it than I am, and those discussions are being had with the current administration. So that is very interesting to me, I like that. I think that there's some really interesting opportunities in that space.
Would you would you be a voice against the formation of a central bank digital currency where we basically the having a federal
Yeah,
form
I
of
understand the question. Some states, some countries have already done that, and it did not turn out well for them. I would want to get smart and really look at like get people much smarter than I am, to learn more about that. But the states that there are countries that have done that, like Venezuela, and no country that has made a nationalized cryptocurrency. It does not bode well for them yet. If one of your listeners knows of an exception, please put it on my radar.
I can't see
Bottom
one.
line, yeah, but bottom line, I'd be interested to learn more about it. And if that were to happen, it would just take a lot of smart people in the room, and it would have to be about in a very transparent way, as well.
So I want to get ready to wrap up because I know you got stuff to do, and it sounds like you're flying somewhere yet today. So, um, when you talk about transparency when it comes to government to public servants
Yeah,
starts with the individual,
yeah,
and that goes for beat cops to city council members to mayors to city administrators all the way up to the president. It's always about the individual.
yeah,
But one of the things we hear people talk about is transparency for when they're in office, but it's always about other people being transparent, and very rarely it's about them. How does Adam approach transparency when he's elected
yeah.
in a way that is tangible to his actual constituents and not
I'm
just
actually
a talking
I'm
point?
actually really glad you answered that, or you asked me that question, TC. Uh, Again, I'm not in office, but what I plan to do throughout this campaign, but even once I'm in office, is to provide transparency through accessibility. I think it's really weird that we have congressmen and senators all over the country, and you don't really know what their positions are, and it's difficult to get a hold of them. I would like to have like a weekly town hall, or I'm doing it in person, but also like this, having some sort of open forum where you could be up in greater Minnesota or in the cities, or whether I'm in DC or if I'm in War Road. You have access to me, and having it in a really open and transparent way where anything I'm voting on, any of the issues, you're literally, TC, we're able to have this exact same conversation 2 years from now. That's my goal. And I don't see why somebody who's trying to serve you, I couldn't make that happen. Sure, I might not be able to have like a schedule where it's every Saturday at 11 a.m., but there should be at least an hour of my week that I carve out to say, hey, Minnesotans who I work for, this is when I will have availability to hop on a call, come and ask me your questions. And if you disagree with what's going on, you get to ask the first questions. And then I owe you why. Like I did this. Well, here's why. And I think that, again, that will bode well for me, because even if you don't agree with me, I think you and I will probably agree 80+% of the time anyways. But even if we don't agree on one of the 20% issues, I think you'll respect me more if I tell you why. And I think you'll give me that grace to hey, I don't agree with Adam every time, but I understand where he's going back to, like right now, where I'm trying to show Minnesotans where I'm grounded, my value sets are. I trust him that I might not have liked that vote, but this is the why he's telling me he did it, and I will give him the pass because I trust him. And so I think that you develop trust by doing that, and I think that's through just accessibility.
Here's what I'll tell you from my perspective.
Yeah, hit me with it.
If you get into office and you need to be able to reach people,
Yeah,
to do that, and I can be of assistance, and I'll say this to anybody who runs for office or gets elected. If you need to be able to reach people in a way where you're accessible and you need somebody to manage that, I will facilitate that. I will absolutely facilitate that, and I will go even further and say I will facilitate the person who has the hardest questions to be able to put them to the front of the line, and not just have it be about, not that you'd get weirded out, because I know how military people are when it's just everybody going, I love you.
yeah,
I would facilitate that. I would help to make that level of transparency possible at the local level.
appreciate it.
I
Yeah,
would,
no,
I would, I
I appreciate
absolutely
that.
would. To the person who is, they've had it. They've had it with politics. They've had it with, once again, the uniparty, the duopoly, whatever you want to call it. And they're just like, I don't see a way forward. I'm no matter how I vote, I just can't get anywhere. Everybody lets me down. I'm not doing it anymore. I'm done. And I know you've run into people like that already. There are a lot of people that have just walked away. What are you going to say to them to bring them back in, and convince them that not only just vote for me because I need to win, but it's the right thing to do?
Uh, Certainly that. I mean, that's probably a happier way to say it, frankly, is the way you just described it. But I also say you get the government you deserve. If you didn't donate your time, if you didn't donate your financial resources, if you didn't get behind somebody, you get the candidate, you get the government you work for. And in this case, you're going to get Peggy Flanagan, who's openly running on transitioning children's genders, or Angie Craig, who sides with violent illegal criminals over American citizens. So there's a really big contrast, and specifically my election. You can poo poo on the sidelines, or you can get involved. And I'm building a team that's going to get involved. I hope that Americans, specifically Minnesotans, understand that this is a historic opportunity this election cycle in Minnesota. But brother, there couldn't be a larger contrast between the end result. You're going to get somebody who's, foundationally a constitutional conservative. Less is more for the federal government versus, the Democrats, which is there's never a check that they won't cash. There's never a tax they won't raise, and they're not for our value sets. I mean, again, look at my rallies. It's American flags, it's veterans, it's patriots versus the Peggy Flanagan rallies where it's Hamas flags and the Palestinian flags, and you get the government you deserve, brother. I mean, so, but I'm not trying to put in such a morose context. I'm just
Well,
running on what I'm for, and and I'm running on what I'm running for, the values I represent, and that's going well so far. But yeah, the people that don't get involved, it's going to be hard to pity for them. I mean, we had that for 4 years in the Biden administration. But again, I'm trying to be that you don't have to choose between a decency and good policy candidate. I'm going to be both. I'm going to be a good, grounded person of character and values, and I'm also going to be a good human.
I think your answer is fair. It's fair, but I think a lot of people have done what they thought was the right thing to do, and then they get to. I mean, the Minnesota House Republicans, just at the Minnesota level, have proven that a lot of them have like literally abandoned these core principles that they said they stood for, and have moved into the cave into the DFL agenda just to try and balance things out. And I think that's where a lot of people are coming from. And I think they're afraid of that at the federal level with the federal house.
I'm not trying to defend them, and I'm not in elected office, but I do. I'm not trying to defend the what some of the people in our Republican Party would call squishy or moderates or rhinos or whatever. But I do think that I'm trying to think of like a moderate Republican in the Minnesota House, but let's go with Smith because I don't know if Smith's there. Like I'm saying a name, but if we're gonna get a Squishy or Rhino Smith versus the DFL right now, I would take Squishy or Rhino Smith. So if Smith took a vote one way to that like we didn't like as somebody who was a constitutional conservative, I'd rather still have Smith than one of those people from the Minneapolis City Council who's on the DSCA, and that's really what the contrast should be, as far as um, where we're electing our people and should they pass a litmus test to remain in the party. That's for the grassroots people to figure out. I'm not meddling in local politics, but I do think that we need to not cast arrows at our team right now because we have a historic opportunity to win a bunch of statewide elections and some federal elections. And I think that we should just get on the same team and not be so worried about, the Minnesota House and who's not passing purity tests when we have some really historic opportunities. I'm not saying that people are wrong to do that. I'm just saying that there's more important things that we should be focused on right now if we want to truly make a difference for our state and our country.
Down ballot is a huge
Yes.
down. I think it's more important than a lot of people understand. It's not just
Yeah.
down ballot from who the presidential
Yeah.
candidates are.
Yeah.
What we saw in Minnesota, the last election cycle, was there were a lot of down ballot losses from
Yes.
the Senate race last year.
Your words,
And
not mine, but data supports what you're saying.
I'm there again. I'm not. It's just a reality. And a question was asked of the individual who was up ballot from a lot of these losses. And do you believe that some of your tactics were, and I think this plays to what you were saying about, trying to build a team.
Yeah.
Do you think that some of your tactics were responsible for a lot of the down ballot losses when you lost, but Trump won, but people under you who supported you also lost their races? How do you, as a Senate nominee or a candidate for Senate, endorsed, primaried, and all of that, get that confirmation? How are you going to build that team so that down ballot candidates are solid and are going to be supported? Because I do think that's what hurt Minnesota in the last election.
Well, again, just objectively, the top of the ticket in Minnesota was so bad that President Trump was winning in Minnesota at one point, and then realized that our candidate was going to hurt the team. So the team Trump pulled out $3 million in resources and essentially gave up Minnesota to ensure they had other swing states. I mean, again, every other swing state flipped. Minnesota is surrounded by red. It's because we had a historic opportunity this last presidential cycle, but we didn't have a candidate that could build confidence in the administration or build a team within Minnesota and it was just divisive, frankly. So again, I'm building a team. I'm not talking negatively about anybody, but I'm also the candidate like Tim Sheehy did last cycle, and who's now U.S. Senator in Montana, to be able to get the outstate donors excited about our race here. And I'm going to get hundreds of millions of dollars invested into not only my race, but whoever's running the gubernatorial ticket and some of these other statewide races to provide resources for down ballot success. That is, again, something that just for whatever reason, the CO brand yields to. That's why we had 5 of 7 congressional flips the last midterms. Is people from outside of Minnesota who may not give a crap about Minnesota's like, oh, that Navy SEAL guy who did really successful things. Well, the best metric for future success is past performance. And those types of people yield high performing teams to success. I'm going to invest in that guy. And that's when we're talking about the donor class. That's what we're talking about. These are wealthy people that don't just throw their money away. They're picking and choose where they want to invest their money in political races as political capital. And you know what? I'm going to make good on those investments, and I'm going to make good on supporting other congressional candidates, specifically CD2, CD4, CD5. But then also hopefully link some other carriages down ballot to my horse and provide resources to some other statewide candidates that I support and get behind, so we can do well in all these states, these races across our state.
So this is maybe one of the hardest questions I'm going to ask you. When you have these down, once again, let's just going off of the assumption, the hypothetical that you get the endorsement. When these down ballot candidates come to you and say, "Hey, we'd really like to have your support,"
Yep.
are you going to be willing to say, "Let my team vet you, sit down and talk to you, find out where you're going to stand on these things, and will you stay true to your principles, or will you compromise?" Will you have those conversations with down ballot candidates?
When it comes to my personal support, I always want to meet people. I mean, because that's my reputation. I've already learned that the hard way once, right? Like
Yeah.
when I yield my name to something I don't know about.
Thank
But
you.
when it comes to
I mean that. Thank you for saying that, because I think that shows transparency.
yeah, but there's the other side of that. If somebody has earned the GOP endorsement, once we're like past the endorsement, I'm going to play good team ball. I mean, that's the whole point of my brand. Is we need to come together to play team ball. So let's say TC ran for Minnesota House and I didn't know you, so we didn't have like a personal rapport. Once you get the GOP endorsement, I am going to absolutely do whatever I can throughout my packs to support you and get you over the line. Again, that's a unique ability that I think I will have that no other Minnesota statewide candidate has had in 20 years. The ability to raise outstate resources to provide them to other candidates.
No one wants TC to run for office, by the way.
You were a hypothetical.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that was not a desire.
No, but you get what I'm saying though, right? Like
I got
we're yields to like my endorsement and my personal relationships. That's one thing. But if you're for our team, I don't care if you're the most ultra extremist or the squishiest moderate. If you're on our team, we need to be on the same team and playing good team ball. That's what the Democrats do really well. That's why they kick our butts all around Minnesota every time, because they fundraise better and they just play better team ball. Like it's a double-edged sword that we're all very individualized and we're all constitutionalists and we're all, I'm the most principled person. Well, I'm more principled, like cool. But if we don't win races, it doesn't matter. It truly doesn't matter unless we win races.
No, I'm at variance with you on this one to some degree, and there again, like we talked about at the beginning, we can't live in an echo chamber. So,
yeah.
So I'm for the team being strong, but I also want to know who's on the team, and that's one of the things that I saw, at the last Libertarian convention that I covered as media. They actually make their candidates pledge to not caucus, for lack of better terminology, with somebody who's ideologically and philosophically opposed to them, just to win a position. And I think that's a phenomenal stance. I understand your stance, and I understand that you want to win and you want to win with the best people possible. I think where our variance comes in is that sometimes people get nominations.
It sounds like you're not willing to compromise on things that you don't want to compromise candidate, which I respect and I appreciate. I just think I'm a little more pragmatic, and we could have the compromise candidate who we don't like on whatever, a couple of issues. Some of them may be very important issues, right? But the contrast, brother, to like what the DFL is going to put forward, Like that is the true contrast for me. Like that again, I know it would suck to to endorse or somebody that's not aligned with our necessarily our full value set. But I just look at like the true so what is the contrast for the other side, because you're right. I'm a reformed libertarian, whatever. I can't say that word. I've everybody in my team is pretty much a libertarian or constitutional conservatives as they're coined now. But I couldn't imagine um putting forward, not supporting somebody who wasn't necessarily as aligned, and I'm in that vein, and then watching them lose to somebody from the DFL who is openly, DSCA, Socialist Communist Party of America. Like that's the contrast. That's the real contrast. So I think I'm more pragmatic. I think, in that regard.
I would not deny your pragmatism on that at all. I am a little rigid sometimes. So
I mean, that's the beauty of
we,
our party is we have principled people all along the spectrum. That's how we have some great conversations, brother.
probably the use of the word spectrum there is far more descriptive than I'd care to admit. If you ask anybody that knows me, I've been known to throw out, well, the tizzy is in the room. So very often describes me. When you look at the direction that the federal government is moving, and you look at the potential of being in the Senate, do you, in your pragmatic side, realize how much of a fight it's going to be for you, even in a majority, to execute a battle plan to make the kind of changes that are needed to be made in governance in the United States?
Yes.
Do you see how hard that's going to be right now?
Yes, it's almost actually impossible for me to put together that battle plan. Like I kind of like how you worded that, frankly, to make the changes needed. But that for me is also the 1,000 meter target, where I have a general election which is a 100 meter target, and I have a primary which is a 50 meter target, and I have an endorsement which is my 5 meter target. So it's just not where my focus is. But you're right. Like when I go to bed and close my little peepers at night, and I imagine like what I will have to do and the fights that I will have to have in the future. You're right. It becomes almost overwhelming when I think of the threats, specifically like our debt, and how do I become a force for change, and so and a for solution in that regard. And for some of those problems, they're just so big and so massive, and they've been going on for so long. Um, so I don't know, but I'm going to be an agent for change. I can tell you that. Really, my focused efforts when I'm out here every day is, as the Marines would say, trying to improve my fighting position. Right now, it's building a team and raising resources for this primary, and then the general to follow.
What are the what do you think your percentage of success with pulling more of the blue-blooded Reagan Democrats over to support the Republicans in this state?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to be cocky or aloof. I like the team that I'm building. Again, this is a team sport. I like the team that I've been really blessed with supporting me. Some of them are some of our mutual friends. They give me strong backing. They give me philosophical mentorship. I think that I will do very well in my main mission right now, which is coalescing our team, our party, under one fighting element for this general election. I like that process, and it's exciting, frankly.
But
The
you
team
think
build,
that can pull blue-blooded, Reagan Democrats? You think that can pull them? Because that's the path to winning in
yeah,
Minnesota.
yeah. Again, I'm providing an option right now that they yearn for. They yearn for a decent, good human that they trust that also has good policies. The Democrats have terrible policies. America gets that. They're pulling at 25%. But some Democrats, some of the politicians have fooled Minnesotans specifically into, oh, you get an option. You get decency or you get good policies. And some of the limousine liberals in the rich areas are like, well, I don't want to. side with somebody who has mean messaging, I'm comfortable because I'm not a have not. And that's
Right.
truly the party of the Democrats right now. They are the people that are the haves. They're the elitists. They're the bureaucrats. They're the people who are comfortable but don't really know about the debt. They're people that they're actually pretty misinformed on the true natures of our country. Where I'm going to go in there and be a force for change, but happy about it. I need to be a happy warrior, brother. I truly am like, nobody wants to vote for the curmudgeons, and that's a large part of
Right.
why Republicans lose is we're the curmudgeons, man. Nobody wants to join the team unhappy.
I, as a curmudgeon, I represent, I represent that. I am a
Yeah,
curmudgeon. People are like,
yeah. So
"Yeah,
that
you're
can't be
never
my brand,
happy."
brother. That can't be
Oh,
my brand going in for the general,
I,
or I will lose.
I'm not asking you to be miserable. Um, one last question, and then I'll let you, say whatever you feel like you need to say. There are third parties in the state of Minnesota, um, that in the last elections, like Rebecca, Rebecca,
Yeah,
Rebecca pulled a record number of votes as a
fifty
libertarian.
thousand, fifty
Yeah,
thousand. Oof.
as a candidate for Senate.
Yeah,
Now, her opponent that lost can't blame her for losing, but she definitely took some votes away from Klobuchar. Absolutely took votes away from Klobuchar. There are third parties like that are willing to look at the next Republican candidate and say, uh, if you represent us well, we and I'm not speaking for any particular party. I just know this to be a fact. If you can promise us some things and represent us, we'll back you. Are you willing to work with people like that?
absolutely. Well, I'll be very careful with my words. I'm not promising anything because then you back yourself into a corner. But my whole brand is I will show up at any point, have a conversation with anybody so you can learn where I stand, my values, and again, know that I'm not for sale. And it just so happens that my political, philosophical value sets, they overlap 99% with constitutional conservative libertarian parties, right? Again, like I'm not hiding that my whole team is pretty much constitutional conservatives, libertarians, reformed. I absolutely want to earn the support of the Minnesota Libertarian Party. I want to earn the support of the grassroots, even the Weed Party. Like I want to earn their support. So they're voting for me. And frankly, you're right. Those third party candidates in the past have pulled largely from the Republican Party. I am hoping that I will do the work to earn those other smaller parties' support, so they're not pulling from me. And then the Independent Party, which is an offshoot of the Democrats, that will be there and that will pull from Flanagan or Craig and not from me. But I truly, part of my plan is I want to earn the support of all those. I'm not going to call them fringe movements, but small parties within Minnesota, and truly do the work, brother. So they're on our team for a winning team because those are still Minnesota citizens. And at the end of the day, they're not going to get one of their candidates across the line. It's just not going to happen. They could have a candidate that hurts me, or they could have me instead of Flanagan or Craig. And absolutely those people have, more in common with I do, like 99%. But I need to do the work there. So that's part of my leadership challenge.
Yeah, I do think you have your work cut out for you with some of those third parties, because
Yeah.
a lot of the people who are doing what you said is staying involved,
Yeah.
staying involved instead of
Yeah.
giving up and going home and then getting what
I
what you
actually,
deserve.
I actually love that you brought that up. Thank you for bringing up PC. Is some of those people specifically like I'm just going to give them a shout out the Libertarian Party of Minnesota. Like those people are ride or die in the political system. They're not leaving the system. They're just not taking part in a major party that has the chance to have a winning candidate. They're kind of doing their own thing and they're having like their cool coffee table discussions on the side. But I want to
No one
make
has ever accused them of being cool, by the way. I just
I
want
th- well, I love having just because that's where I'm philosophically more aligned. I love having those conversations. and talking about like what is the role of government, what's the role of this entity, what's the founding fathers view of this specifically, having talks about like the actual verbiage of the constitution things. I really, and maybe I'm a nerd now, but I like those conversations with those people, especially when we're doing it with intellectual honesty. And it's just those are interesting. But yes, at the end of the day, they are not going to have a candidate that wins U.S. Senate. So my whole like pitch to them is l- get on my team, because if you get on my team, I will be the best thing for libertarians in American government right now, because their presidential candidate was a disaster. The party nationally is dead. The brand is dying. But what's more important, like the libertarian standard, to have that like your flag of libertarian party, or have a candidate that represents those value sets? And I could talk about not only that, but there's some other third party movements where they just want to hear their thing. They have a thing and they want a candidate they'll support their thing. Well, as long as their thing is constitutional, I can get on board with that. And to contrast, you're going to get that, or you're going to get Craig or Flanagan, who take all of the grossest PAC monies for all the darkest organizations and support the things that are not only anti-Minnesotan, but they're anti-American. The stuff that Peggy stands for is truly anti-American. It's the opposite. The DSCA is opposite of what I am. So again, you get a binary choice. That is American government. We don't have different political movements that are in the party anymore. You have a two-party system. But at least I think that throughout our conversation today, you're like, holy cow, I can get behind this guy. I might not agree with him 100% of the time, but he's going to be for transparency and accessibility. So if there's something I care about, I can get through to him.
I said one more question, and that was not 100% accurate. And
You sound like a politician right now.
touche. Will you honor?
Yes.
You know what I'm going to ask?
I'm assuming the endorsement, but when you say, well, I honor, I have honor. So I honor, I have honor.
Will you stand by? Will you stand by an endorsement, or
Yeah.
would you take it to primary depending on who the endorsement is?
I mean, I can say this. It's. I'm gonna get the endorsement, so it's maybe I'm being cocky or confident, but I'm doing the work. I'm not. I'm getting the endorsement because I'm doing the work for the endorsement. The team I'm building right now,
I
the
appreciate the
architecture.
confidence. So,
Yeah, I'm,
but
I'm going to get
but
the endorsement. So
you know why I'm asking, because it's
yeah,
something that
yeah.
gets said by a lot of people,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then
So I know that's why you're asking me, is all the politicians in Minnesota specifically in the back. They're like, yeah, they say they do it, and then no. If I don't get the endorsement, then screw me. I suck. I shouldn't even be in this, because if you look, I've been doing this since February 20th now. I'm doing the work for the endorsement. There's a couple of other candidates that are looking to get in this race that are going to be running right to the primary if they get in. But the endorsement for me, it's not only am I going to get it, but it's not just a check in the box. It's how I am trying to build the foundation of my team through principled people across the state who are involved in the political process, and then we scale up that apparatus for the primary and the general. So I'm working for the endorsement, not just because the stupid check in the box. The let's be honest, the authority, the power, it doesn't come with any money. I mean, it doesn't come with really that much in, like, as far as like wrappings and stuff. It's because the process to get there means that I have to appeal to the majority of the people who care about politics in Minnesota, the people who are doing the work. And so, yeah, hell yeah, I'm going to get the endorsement. I'm working for the endorsement, but it's not just a check in the box. It's because then we have that machine, that army that we're scaling up for the real mission, which is the general election.
okay. I appreciate the fact that you said, then if I don't get it, then screw me, I didn't do the work. So I mean,
Yeah.
it's a fair statement.
Yeah.
Give everybody your final thoughts as far as what your plan is, and in your ultimate goal besides winning the election. Obviously, we know you want to win, but where are you taking this, and why?
I mean, the whole taking this is because I like to say nobody gets involved in politics, and I know this is going to resonate with you, until you've had a personal intersection with politics, with policies, with the government that affects you, either in a negative or a positive way. I spent my whole life as a Marine and then a Navy SEAL doing really impactful missions and things for our country until I was affected in a very negative way. COVID essentially opened up my eyes. And I realize now that never again can we go back to that. So I'm going to spend the rest of my life serving our country like I had previous to that, just in a different capacity. And I'd like you to be on my team. You can shoot me an email at info@schwarzeforsenate.com. You can go to my campaign site, which is schwarzeforsenate.com. We have a Facebook page. We have on our Facebook page, we have the campaign emails, address, and phone numbers. I promise if I don't get back to you within 24 hours, somebody on our team will. But if I had to guess, the majority of the people who are your viewers are exactly the kind of people who I want on our team supporting our brand in this fight. And so I would love for your support. Send us an email, shoot me a text on that line. If it's not me with the campaign phone, somebody will get back to you. Become a delegate. If you have money, again, great. But really, your time is the most important resource. I'd love to have your time and support on our team for this. Truly, what I believe in is our no fail mission, my no fail mission for our great country.
Anything that you want to clarify that you personally have looked back on throughout the conversation, or maybe in other times that you would like people to know that you want to clarify, or that you didn't get to say that you felt is essential?
I don't know, I'll give it a moment for your commenters if people want to have further clarification, or if you have further clarification, maybe something came off wrong, or you want more.
No, I don't personally. I'm not doing this to. Everybody knows me, so I had somebody reach out to me this morning.
Yeah.
And not about you, but they
Yeah.
want me on the team. They want my endorsement. And I think you've gotten to know me a little bit just in some of our exchanges. I don't do this as an endorsement one way or another. I do this to talk to people.
Yeah,
And
I did this to have I know we had some interaction, but I came on so you could ask me questions, sometimes hard questions, sometimes not, sometimes philosophical questions, but now we're just putting truth out there, right? So people can pick it up or not. But I would love to have your support. But yeah, I'm not looking for an endorsement, but support
no,
yeah.
No, I wasn't saying that to say like not a chance in hell, Schwarze. I was saying that because I want people to know that the invite's open to any of those other people that are running for Senate, and I will say the name now. I'm going to say it. Royce White, you are the only other loud, very vocal voice running for this Senate's nomination. I have asked numerous times to have you on. I will treat you exactly the same way that I have treated Adam today. Adam, did I ask questions?
Yeah, just open, transparent questions.
I will treat anybody who wants to come on who's running for the seat, even a Democrat. I will treat them the same way. I will ask I will not exact same questions, but this is why these things are important in this media age that we live in now. There's no reason for anybody who wants to run to represent the people, the people of the state of Minnesota, to avoid any platform, to make any time. It's not like you got to pack up and travel 4 hours to be on somebody's platform.
Oh yeah, thank you. By the way, I thought I was going to have to drive a few hours away, so I appreciate you being easy on me. And yeah, I do them all. I do literally any podcast, any show, as long I've to actually get it on my schedule, and I have a lot of other commitments to battle. But like this morning, I had the time. If I have an opening, I will do anytime, any place. From the left wing, I've done some of the left wing Minnesota stuff to some of the conservative podcasts. I do it all, so people can know who I am, and then I owe that to any Minnesotan who I'm trying to work for.
And that's why I wanted to have you on, was because I want people to see, like, I'm serious about this, that these kind of conversations, long form, are far more important than soundbite radio
Absolutely.
appearances or quick TV appearances. and being able to talk it out
Yeah.
as opposed to, well, yeah, but you said this one time, and
Yeah.
it it just, to me, it smacks of mm, I think the kids call it clout chasing, or they used to. I don't know what they call it
I,
today, but
I don't know what that is.
uh, it's these conversations are incredibly important, and I really appreciate you taking uh, the time to do it. And I think we'll probably revisit having you on again as as the campaign progresses, as you get further into it. I know you're serious about it, but as you get further into it, when you've had time to kind of coalesce and know exactly the root structure outside of what you already have, but the growing root structure of your support, and especially when we start to know what the actual opponent field looks like going forward.
Yeah.
Um, I'll say to you what I say to everybody: stay grounded. I I know that seems, a lot of people hear that and go, well, like, he's grounded. I mean, the guy was in combat, but stay grounded. Um, don't Somebody made the reference before, and I know it came up one other time. There's a particular other person out there who might be known as a variation of John McCain, and I that individual um, seems to have lost a lot of the people that supported him because he seems to have forgotten where he came from, and I don't see that happening for you.
Yeah,
But
I think part of, well, first off, great advice. Thank you. Second off, if you look at like my whole trajectory of my career, Marine Corps basic training, you don't get any more grounded than that. And then I joined my first fleet unit as an infantry guy, and you're an FNG, and you can look up what that means. But I was an FNG for my first deployment.
it's a
It's pretty.
submachine gun.
No. um, Pretty grounded. And then I went and got accepted to the commissioning program. So I had to come back and do Marine Corps OCS, regrounded. Then I got selected for SEAL. So I had to go to do Navy officer candidate school, regrounded. Then I had to go through the BUDS, the SEAL pipeline. Again, doesn't get you more humbling and regrounding than that. Then I joined my first SEAL platoon. Again, you're the FNG, regrounded. Then in 2016, I screened for that other entity. I have to go through that pipeline, regrounding. So if you look at the trajectory of my whole career, it's not like I came in for 8 years, ascended the ranks, and got out. No, I continually reset my career and have been regrounded, rehumbled about every year and a half to 2 years for the last 23 years. So being humble is kind of what's made me successful. Is I've never gotten away from myself because everything I do every year and a half, 2 years is a new thing, a new plateau. But with that comes with some humbling. And I think I think that you're right. It is very good to stay humble and stay grounded.
and and I, like I said, anybody who gets into office, who's running for office, and when they get in, I'm just like, stay that way, be that person.
Yeah.
um because I'm never gonna call you Mr. Senator. That's just not who I am. I don't use titles.
Yeah.
um and I just want you to know, out of respect, I did not make a single crayon joke. I don't know if you noticed that throughout this entire thing. I made not one crayon joke this
No,
entire
appreciate
time.
it.
So,
It wouldn't have hurt my feelings if you had, I promise.
oh no, I do appreciate your time. I know you got stuff to do. You got are you flying out today or tomorrow?
Tonight, yeah.
Tonight? Flying out to the cesspool, huh?
Yep.
How many
Yeah.
how many hours do you have to shower after you leave there?
It's pretty gross. Some of the conversations I have these days. I'll be honest. I do not like the process. I'm supposed to say it's my calling, but more I feel, if I'm being honest, it's my obligation
Mhm.
because this country has given me so much, provided me for so much opportunities, and then also, I mean, I've left a lot. I've sacrificed a lot of
Mhm.
brothers on the battlefield, and I have too much skin in the game. So I definitely feel that since I've made out of it, I have a lot of medical things, but I'm still alive. I am obligated now to not let our country fail, especially when I know I can do it better than everybody else who's running in this race right now for both sides.
Um, I definitely, and this is not meant to be tongue in cheek. This is 100% serious. You are definitely the best Republican option in the state of Minnesota, and I mean that. I think you've demonstrated integrity today and moxie, because you literally, just so people know, we had we did not script this out. We did not have any conversation about what we were going to talk about. And for those of you that know the show, that's how I am. I'm not going to have a conversation with somebody unless I can actually have the conversation. I don't do protectionism or interventionism. So I will let you go. I'm going to do a pitch. I'm sure you heard my opening. I'm going to pitch for the training, the political activism training that we've got coming up on June 7th. I'll do that after you get off screen. Leave your server open long enough, because you're going to be able to download this, by the way.
Okay.
And it will actually generate clips that if you decide you want to use them,
Oh,
feel
cool.
free. Just
Appreciate it.
tell people where they're from and where you got them. And
Awesome.
so
No,
I
appreciate it. And thanks for
appreciate.
the opportunity to be here today, brother. I enjoyed the engaging conversation, and I look forward to later on down the road another opportunity.
I did not make him say that. So I really appreciate Adam. Go and enjoy the rest of your day as you get ready to get out, and tell your other half, your seven. Do you say your better 7/8 that
Yeah,
we appreciate her sacrificing you so that she doesn't have to be in the limelight.
I'll relay that message. Thanks, brother. Appreciate it. God bless.
All right. Take care. Thank you. Folks, I do want to show you guys one more time the website for signing up for the training on June 7th. Let's see if I can. I know it doesn't show up real well here. The link will be in the description of the video, but we need 15 more people to sign up for the training. And even if you can't go and you want to look at it as a donation, we would love to be able to have those who can make it to this training on June 7th be able to go. But without 15 more, we're going to have to cancel. So if there's anything you can do, it's $50. So if we could just get 15 people to do $50 a piece, if you have it, please do it. This is very important training that we need for people who are going to be fighting for the Defend the Guard legislation. This is incredibly important legislation, folks. And it's going to save American service members' lives when we get this passed. Not if, but when we get this passed. We are ready to fight for this. I am willing to go to the Minnesota House and the Minnesota Senate and testify in front of committee or in front of both the full House and the full Senate. And there are others like me who are willing to do it. We are a formidable force. And we are very thankful to Travis Johnson, to Bull, for having got this started several years ago in Minnesota to push this forward. And we are very thankful to people like Rebecca and others who have continued to make this an issue in the state of Minnesota. We have built literally a nonpartisan support structure for this legislation. Senator Nathan Wiesenberg was able to pull a DFLer in to sponsor the legislation in the Minnesota Senate. It's common sense that we end these foreign wars and the escalatory actions of the United States and interventionism the empire building that has been going on since the end of World War II. And that's why guys like Adam are important, because they recognize the importance of this. And that's why there are so many veterans who are taking the plunge, if you will, to take this legislation seriously and getting behind it. From combat veterans to just veterans in general. So if you can, please help us be able to help people so that they can get the training to be able to become better, more effective warriors for this cause, to be able to execute. It means a ton to a bunch of us. And I can't thank you guys enough for all the support, for those that have given to the Give Send Go for the fundraiser for my family since the other half's heart attack in November. It's an insurmountable bill. It's weighing really heavy on us, to be honest with you. And so for those of you that are channel members or that have that super chat or super thanks or super sticker at times, everything that you do helps. There's no amount of money in the world that is too much to pay to save a loved one's life. And you guys have helped with that a lot by continuing to support the channel, share the content to help keep this out in the algorithm. So thank you for all of that. And help me reach other people to come on the show, to let them know that I'm willing to have these conversations. If they're running for Senate, if they're running for House, if they're running for mayor, if they're running for, whatever in the state of Minnesota or anywhere else for that matter. I would love to have conversations like this. And most especially, I've given this time to Adam. I will give the exact amount of time to Royce White. And I will treat you the same way as I treated Adam. Adam put his money where his mouth is. He came on the show not knowing what he was going to be asked. The offer is out there for Royce and for anybody else. Adam kept his word, because men keep their words. People of integrity and ethics keep their word. That says a lot about Adam. Thank you guys for supporting. And until next time, my friends, fight for your liberty. It is yours. Fight for your freedom. It belongs to you. And Sic Semper Tyrannis.
We are go for liftoff in T-minus 30.
Stand by for further instructions, Minnesota Black Robe Regiment.
Secondary guidance systems engaged.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, it will be on my mark.
All systems are a go. All systems are a go.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, you are over the target. You are authorized to fire at will.